Hi everyone, we hope you're doing well. We're hanging in there though honestly, we haven't been getting much sleep lately. Today, we want to answer a question we get a lot: how do we publish our audiobooks? First, we post most audiobooks on Patreon as paid content. They stay paid for a few months. After that, they become free to listen to on Patreon forever. A few weeks later, we post them on other places like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, X. Lately, things have been a bit slow in terms of new members. So we'd love your help. Please share our site with your friends or in places like Facebook groups, Twitter, X, Discord, Reddit, or novel forums. Even one share can really help us grow. Thanks so much for your support. Chapter 1, My Casa, a gloomy girl. The sun slowly crept up, its light gradually spilling across the lawn and brightening the room. Warmth seeped into the covers. Luke Nova, deep in sleep, was pulled awake by an odd sensation. He blinked his hazy eyes open, his mind slowly coming back online, like his very soul had been off on a trip and just snapped back into his body. As awareness dawned, he figured out what was going on and let out a weak, soft sigh. A moment passed. Sigh. He pushed off the soft blanket piled entirely on his upper body and looked helplessly at my Casa Ackerman standing beside his bed. My Casa. Can't you just wake me up normally? My Casa wiped the corner of her mouth. Her long black hair was casually thrown over her shoulders, and her bright, clear eyes were fixed on him. Yet, her pretty features seemed completely devoid of emotion. She utterly ignored his question. Breakfast is ready. You can get up and eat now. Changing the subject again. Luke didn't press further, he just needed to get dressed. But the two just locked eyes, standing in silence, as if time itself had frozen. Could you step out for a second? I need to change. Luke urged her. My Casa paid him no mind, simply standing her ground. Her voice remained flat. Helping the master change is part of a maid's duties. Please don't push it away. Luke was lost for words. He stood up and gave my Casa a little push, trying to get her out of his room. It was one last stand for his dignity. But how could he, barely stronger than your average guy, possibly stand against the oh-so-delicate my Casa? You're already tired enough from your usual work. Just leave little things like this to me. My Casa's expression remained calm as she spoke, her hands already moving. She grabbed Luke's arms, effortlessly subduing her master, who'd foolishly overestimated himself and tried to be self-sufficient. My Casa executing the classic Chikakujo, the lower overthrowing the upper. His lack of strength forced him to accept defeat. And so, just cooperate, or we'll run out of time. Forget the clothes, but you don't need to change my underwear. I've studied basic health. Boys your age need to change their underwear frequently. But not every single day. Luke's attempt to overthrow my Casa's reign failed. Spectacularly, again. Luke panted, catching his breath, while looking at my Casa, whose breathing was still perfectly even, looking relaxed and comfortable. He couldn't wrap his head around it. He'd never skipped a workout, and his strength had definitely increased as he grew, so why did the gap between him and my Casa feel like it was only getting wider? After years of practice, my Casa was incredibly skilled at this whole changing routine. Even with his reluctant cooperation, she dressed him up in no time. I'll tidy the bed in a bit. You go wash up. My Casa tugged at the hem of Luke's shirt, smoothing out the wrinkles. Luke tugged at his collar and warned her, don't do anything weird with my underwear. My Casa just went back to work, neatly folding his pajamas and setting them aside before starting to straighten the sheets and fold the blanket. Her silence spoke volumes. Luke shook his head and walked into the bathroom. He turned on the faucet. The splash-splash sound of running water was calming. He scooped up a handful of cool water and splashed it onto his face. The morning struggle with my Casa had finally shaken the last bits of sleep from him. After a quick wash with some face cleanser, he looked at himself in the mirror. He'd been in this world for 2 years now. Living in a world quite similar to his last wasn't something he could really complain about. His foreign father and local mother had even left him a house and enough money to scrape by. The family's long-standing reputation in the exorcism business meant he had a decent enough stream of clients. With a solid income from his profession plus the money in his account, he wasn't living a life of luxury, but at least it kept him fed and clothed decent enough. But starting out completely alone had been a bit much to handle for someone like him who'd never really had to fend for himself. Luckily, the ever-reliable cheat system had given him a new world starter pack, letting him summon 2 maids, Annie Lenhart and my Casa Ackerman. According to the info, they were from an anime series called Attack on Titan. He wasn't too familiar with it, but their arrival definitely spiced up his life and broke him out of his solitary existence. The downside: finances that were comfortable for one person suddenly became tight. Thinking of this, he pulled up the system interface, Life Growth System, name, Luke, attributes, Strength 12, Agility 12, Constitution 9, Spirit 15, Average Human, 10, Household, Maids, Micah Ackerman, Annie Lenhart, Occupations, Occupation 1, Exorcist, Occupation 2, Student, Occupation 3, Transmigrator, Items, Exorcism Talismans, Exorcism Sword, Inconspicuous Glasses, Missions, Occupation Mission, Exorcist, Kick these ghosts' butts. Help others with supernatural problems, 8 out of 10. Occupation Mission, Student, Study hard, improve daily, the duty of every student. Complete homework assignments, 37 out of 50. Occupation Mission, Transmigrator, change the life trajectory of world characters, 0 out of 3. Life Mission, the value of life lies in continuous self-improvement. Total attribute points exceed 50, 48 out of 50. He gently dried his face with a towel and walked out of the bathroom. He could brush his teeth after breakfast. All the food was already laid out on the table. Resistance failed again? Annie asked, lightly brushing a stray strand of blonde hair from her face as she rested her chin on her hand, looking at the boy. Sigh. Luke let out a hopeless sigh. It was a long, tearful story. If this keeps up, I'm seriously going to be turned into a complete waste. It's fine. I have faith you won't let yourself go. Annie said. Don't overthink it. This is just that gloomy girl's way of trying her best, after all. Gloomy girl? Thinking about the intense, almost sulky expression Micah always wore whenever she saw him talking to other girls, Luke couldn't help but chuckle. Ha ha ha. Let's eat, let's eat. Micah happened to walk over to the table and looked at Annie, putting on the exact gloomy expression Annie had just described and Luke had imagined. Annie calmly put down her bowl and chopsticks, completely unfazed by Micah's death glare. She looked up at the black-haired girl, thought for a second, and said, "We're out of eggs. Remember to pick some up from the supermarket after school." Micah replied faintly, pulling out a chair and sitting down. This back and forth was part of their daily routine. Even though they came from the same world and had lived together for a while, minor clashes often happened. On the surface, at least. After all, their personalities and ways of handling things didn't exactly mesh well. Luke quickly finished his meal. Thanks to Micah's personal alarm clock service, he didn't have any more time to waste. Being late for school wasn't a good habit. So, he wolfed down his food. I'm full. Luke put down his empty bowl. He didn't bother with pleasantries as he left the table. Anyway, with their dedicated mission to spoil him rotten, they certainly weren't about to let him lift a finger for chores. Chapter 2, Tennis Class. Giving himself extra time, he finally didn't have to go all out just to reach the classroom before class started. Although there weren't many people around when he got to school, and there were only a few minutes left before class. But at least he had enough spare time to avoid a panicked race against the bell. Luke walked onto the school grounds alone. It's worth noting that Micah and Annie didn't go to the same school as him. Honestly, Micah's somewhat withdrawn personality wasn't exactly suited for school life, and neither was Annie's. Plus, to make things easier for housework and grocery shopping, the two maids chose the private Toyogasaki High School, which was closer to home. So, it was also more convenient for him to have his own private time and enjoy the relaxed pace of school life. He headed up the stairs. The bell hadn't rung yet. As he approached the corner landing, liking the cool sensation, he walked close to the chilly wall. Spotting the corner, he gradually slowed his steps. He really didn't feel like having a head-on collision contest in this accident-prone spot. Ah! A blonde girl, wearing the Sobu High girl's uniform, appeared right in front of him. The sudden appearance made the girl's eyes fly open. She stopped abruptly, but lost her balance because of it, her body falling towards him. Luke stepped back and put out an arm. The blonde girl flailed in panic, trying to regain her balance on tiptoe. Her waving hands grabbed onto the arm he'd put across his chest, and her body leaned right against him. Even through their clothes, he could easily feel the girl's frantic heartbeat. Pretty soft. The girl stopped herself from falling further and took quick breaths to calm down. These kinds of surprises really get your heart racing. He'd already been trying to be careful, but still ran into trouble. If he'd known, he wouldn't have put on headphones to listen to music, which prevented him from hearing her footsteps. Looking at the blonde girl, Luke gave her a quick scan. Her fairly common blonde hair was a bit messy, with a few curls at the ends. Her features were quite pretty, and it looked like she had a touch of makeup on. Looked like we are classmates. Yeah, maybe. With that thought, seeing she had regained her balance, Luke gave a slight nod and walked past her towards the classroom. Hey! Miro Yumiko clutched her chest, glaring angrily as the cause of the incident just walked off without a word. She wanted to chase after him and say something, but remembering she had other things to do, she had to let it go. Still, wasn't that guy her classmate? Miro Yumiko tried to recall, uncertain. Once inside the classroom, Luke vaguely recalled the blonde girl's identity. She was indeed his classmate, seemed pretty popular, had her own circle of friends, and was clearly the center of her clique, a total normie. But it didn't really matter. Before entering the classroom, even though he didn't need glasses, he'd put on the item the system had given him long ago, inconspicuous glasses. These incredibly ugly glasses lived up to their name, drastically reducing his presence and making him unnoticeable. While they weren't like those presence-erasing items from some stories that make the wearer practically invisible and able to get away with anything, they were more than enough to let him openly sleep in class or slip out early. Since he often went out at night helping people with exorcisms, he was almost always sleep-deprived. So, having an item like this was a real godsend. Soon, the first class began. A female teacher walked in, wearing a white lab coat draped over her shoulders, over a black top that showcased her impressive figure. If this weren't a high school, you might mistake her for a researcher or a doctor. It was their Japanese literature teacher, Hiratsuka Shizuka. At the same time, right behind her was a panting Miro Yumiko. Even so, she didn't forget to shoot a fierce glare across the classroom. Luke wasn't bothered. He just focused on blending in, and as Hiratsuka-sensei hurried her along, Yumiko completely missed him. Hiratsuka Shizuka began her lesson. He tried to listen attentively for a bit, but the sleepiness he couldn't fight crept up on him, aided by Miss Hiratsuka's pleasant voice. Although he wanted to show the beautiful teacher some respect, his eyelids felt like heavy gates, unable to resist the relentless assault of drowsiness, and slowly closed over his dark eyes. Muttering a silent good night, Luke drifted off. In a hazy daze of sleep, Luke felt someone nudging him. Coming to his senses, he reluctantly opened his eyes. "What's up?" he mumbled, rubbing his tired eyes. "Hey, next period is PE," an unfamiliar classmate with gray hair reminded him. Seeing the classroom emptying out, Luke realized the next class was tennis. "Oh. Thanks." Luke stretched his stiff neck and thanked the cute girl who'd woken him. He picked up the inconspicuous glasses that had fallen onto his desk. No wonder someone had noticed him, otherwise, he probably would have slept right through PE. I don't think I've seen him before." The unfamiliar cute classmate muttered quizzically. PE class was such a pain. Instead of sweating buckets under the sun enjoying youth, he'd much rather be comfortably napping in the classroom, lulled by the teacher's voice, savoring the sweet feeling of wasting time. And so, tennis class began without a hitch. Like every PE class, it started with warm-ups, after which the teacher demonstrated and explained all the basic moves. "Alright, start pairing up and practice hitting. Spread out." Then, the students started pairing off in twos and threes, spreading out across the courts. For this kind of activity, students with established cliques quickly formed groups. Even those in odd-numbered groups could usually use their decent social skills to team up with other spare students. But, just as there are socially adept people, there are also socially awkward ones. That's usually why the PE teacher would strictly enforce pairing up for practice. However, Luke wasn't worried in the slightest. He didn't need to make up some physical or mental excuse for the teacher. He'd just put on his glasses, keep a low profile, and quietly slip off to the side. "Huh? Hey. You're actually in my class? I don't think I've ever seen you before." Miro Yumiko stood with one hand on her hip, the other gripping her tennis racket tightly, her eyes locked onto him. "Crap. I prefer to keep to myself," he said. "I haven't forgotten about this morning." Miro Yumiko looked annoyed just thinking about the morning incident, idly spinning her racket in her hand. She looked kinda cute when she was angry. So, her intention was crystal clear. Luke thought for a moment, then picked up the racket. "Alright. Here's your chance for revenge. But just so you know, this is my first time playing." Chapter 3, F equals Ma. Luke swung the tennis racket easily, getting used to the rhythm. He rarely played sports like tennis, although during his free time, he would play badminton with Annie, which was similar. As for Mikasa, forget it. That girl's athletic ability was on a whole different level from normal people. Playing a competitive sport like this against her was like hitting a rock with an egg. The one and only time he played badminton with Mikasa, he seemed to spend the entire match just picking up the shuttlecock. Even Annie, watching from the side, looked at him with pity. Just thinking about it made him mad. What kind of maid treats her master like that? Thus the match began. Thanks to Miro Yumiko's status in school, the classmates, who were enthusiastic about everything except studying, immediately turned their attention over. Miro Yumiko's little group of friends also stopped playing and looked their way. Tobekakeru walked over to Hayama Hayato, the central hearth of their group, and asked strangely, "Is this guy our classmate? How come I feel like I've never seen him before?" How'd he tick off Miura? Ayama Hayato gave an awkward smile. He is indeed our classmate. His name is Luke Nova. He's just a bit introverted. Behind them, Ebenahina heard this and let out a strange laugh that sent chills down your spine. Ayama glanced back, saw Ebena's perverted fangirl smile, and couldn't help but facepalm with a wry smile. This girl's definitely imagining some BL scenario involving her classmates again. How do we score? I don't know the rules. Luke asked, still swinging the racket in his hand. Just the most basic scoring rules are fine. First to 10 points wins. As soon as she finished speaking, Miro Yumiko served first. The tennis ball shot quickly towards his left side. Luke was right-handed. Relying on his above-average stats, he just barely managed to reach the ball on his left. But his unfamiliar, non-standard hitting form only managed to send the ball into the net. 1. Miro Yumiko said, a hint of a smile showing. So skilled. Luke looked at the composed Miro Yumiko. Her slender legs definitely looked well-trained. This match might be tough. Just as he expected, the next few points went similarly. Although, through observation and practice, he quickly figured out a knack for attacking and returning in tennis, and slowly started managing to rally back and forth a few times. But this girl seemed exceptionally good at this sport, always managing to find his weak spots with her serves or returns. If it came down to skill, he probably wasn't her match yet. Plus, his unfamiliarity with tennis meant he couldn't really plan or outline any tactics that would tip the scales of victory in his favor. So, that left only one way for him to possibly win, overpowering her with his stats. No matter how good Miro Yumiko was at tennis, she was still just a girl. Physically, there was a natural disadvantage, especially compared to him, whose strength stat far exceeded a normal person's. As long as the skill gap wasn't as wide as a pro versus a complete beginner, he still had a chance to win. And so, Luke took action. Making sure the ball would clear the net, he started hitting it back with all his strength. Miro Yumiko's face flushed slightly, sweat starting to bead on her forehead. Seeing her opponent steadily finding his rhythm, her initial intention of causing trouble slowly faded. Now, she just wanted to win this duel. Gripping the tennis ball tightly, Miro Yumiko served again. Only, this time, Luke didn't move. He looked at the notification panel, letting the tennis ball bounce past him. Strength +1, sorry, I zoned out. Luke said, turning back to pick up the ball, looking at his stat panel. Attributes, Strength 13, Agility 12, Constitution 10, Spirit 15. His strength had successfully broken through from 12 points to 13 during the match with Miro Yumiko. And because he often exhausted his stamina dealing with Mikasa and Annie, coupled with lack of sleep, his constitution stat had dropped to 9 points. Now, it had successfully recovered by 1 point. Therefore, notification, life mission, the value of life lies in continuous self-improvement. Attribute points exceed 50, 50 out of 50, completed. You have received a reward, Book of Strength. Item, Book of Strength. When you hold this book, you will ignore attribute limits and gain an additional +3 strength. Notification, you have received a new, life mission, labor creates life's value. Earn 500,000 yen through work, 0 out of 500,000. Humphrey, what kind of excuse is that? Miro Yumiko scoffed, unimpressed by her opponent letting her score freely. An excuse is an excuse, I guess. Luke replied nonchalantly, taking the Book of Strength out of his item inventory. The +3 strength instantly made him feel different. But things are going to be different now, Mira-san. Be careful. What's with the trash talk? You think that's enough to win? Huh? Miro Yumiko retorted, amused, only to see him pull out a book from nowhere. No, the point wasn't the book, the point was where did he pull that book from? What are you doing with a book? Where did you get that from? Miro Yumiko couldn't help asking. 13 + 3 = 16 points of strength. Luke felt the power flowing continuously from the book in his hand, surging through his entire body. He felt a peculiar confidence now, like he could kill a bull with one punch. A strength of 10 was indeed the standard for an average person, but that standard was for an average person in their prime, at the peak of their strength. But he didn't celebrate yet. This sudden surge of power felt too absurd. He wasn't that familiar with tennis, and if he used his strength recklessly, things could easily go wrong. Mira-san, just surrender. I've already broken through the limits of an Earthling and become a Super Earthling. If I get serious, things could get dangerous. Luke stated matter-of-factly. The classmates watching started jeering along, go for it. Super Earthling, defeat the evil Space Emperor, Mira Furry. Miro Yumiko shot a viper-like glare towards the crowd. Seeing Miro Yumiko's glare, like a python ready to strangle them, the jeering classmate quickly shut his mouth. Mira looked back at Luke, speechless. What nonsense are you spouting? If you want to surrender, Just hurry up and do it. Who asks their opponent to give up mid-match? That's ridiculous. Luke shook his head helplessly. He thought his little speech might make her feel awkward enough to forfeit. But he didn't want to lose either. So, he replied, you have a point. It's not good to give up halfway through a match. I'll give it my all. He held the book open with one hand, looking with interest at the large characters on the cover of the Book of Strength. The way of strength lies within. He flipped it open, and the truth was right before his eyes. F equals ma. Here I come. Taking a deep breath, Luke put the Book of Strength back into his inventory and served. The strong urge to unleash his power made him swing the racket with full force. As his right hand prepared to swing, the Book of Strength suddenly appeared in his free left hand, granting his body the +3 strength bonus. Miro Yumiko watched his movements intently. Having been in the tennis club since middle school, she was experienced. She was fully prepared for her opponent's desperate last stand, her eyes sharply focused on his movements and the trajectory of the ball. But she quickly realized something was wrong. This shot was a bit fast. There was no time to react. Years of tennis training made her instinctively dash forward, while her arm swung the racket with all its might, perfectly positioned to intercept the incoming projectile. But smack! The racket flew out of her hand. The tennis ball didn't stop, mercilessly whizzing past her and slamming into the metal fence behind with a loud thwack. Miro Yumiko's legs gave out, unable to support her anymore. The terrifying sound of the ball ripping through the air had stunned her. She sat weakly on the ground, the roaring sound of the tennis ball cannonball still echoing in her ears. A layer of mist clouded her eyes. Although Miro Yumiko wasn't hurt, her little group still rushed over. Are you okay, Yumiko? A girl with light pink hair quickly comforted the fallen girl. Miro Yumiko gritted her teeth and stood up. Sorry, are you alright? Luke put the Book of Strength back in his inventory. He had regretted it somewhat right after swinging with all his might. Thankfully, he'd managed to slightly correct the ball's trajectory at the last moment. Otherwise, if that tennis ball had hit her, things would have been bad. Seeing her opponent's calm demeanor, the mist in her eyes grew thicker. Mustering strength from who knows where, she braced herself, turned around, and ran off. Sorry about that. Ayama said apologetically. Luke nodded in response. Making a girl cry feels pretty good. Chapter 4, Hiratsuka Shizuka finally clenched her fist. Mossy old temple, even you high darkness. The evil born of resentment, curses, and laments corrupts the sacred statues, staining the sky gray. And right beside it, a children's park filled with laughter and joy. The border between darkness and light, like a sharp sword splitting this world in two. Therefore, the slow fading of my social life is actually a righteous act to save the world. Hiratsuka Shizuka finished reading his essay, her head aching. She sat in her chair, massaging her temples, muttering under her breath, why is every student nowadays more problematic than the last? Luke stared out the window. The sunlight was just right. Hearing Shizuka read his work reminded him of that damn temple. Shizuka clenched her fist, took 2 deep breaths to calm herself. Luke, do you have to turn the essay assignment I gave you into a horror novel? Huh? What do you mean, sensei? Luke asked, genuinely surprised. Don't you think my writing is pretty good? Calling it brilliant wouldn't be an exaggeration. The fist she'd just relaxed clenched tight again. Shizuka narrowed her eyes, her foot stomping hard on the floor. What was our essay topic, remember? Reflecting on high school life. What about it? What does this have to do with high school life? Does the school offer exorcism classes? Does it? No, right? Speechless, Shizuka pushed her hair back, her impressive chest practically bursting the buttons of her shirt out of sheer frustration. Didn't you say, sensei, that we should draw more from things that happen in our daily lives? What high school life did Luke even have? Wasn't it just catching up on sleep or heading somewhere to catch up on sleep? It wasn't like he couldn't just make up a passable essay, but Shizuka, having seen his previous attempts, had repeatedly warned him to write this assignment properly. Helpless, he could only recount the events of his job, one by one, on paper. Apparently, though, his factual recounting of events was less effective than just making something up. That really hurt. Your high school life is certainly rich, seeing ghosts every day. Miss Hiratsuka's tone was partly teasing, partly exasperated. The school really had more than its fair share of problem children. Her throat felt a bit dry from talking. She pulled a cigarette pack from her nearly bursting pocket, skillfully tapped one out, and took out a lighter, ready to relax. No smoking. It's not right for a teacher to smoke in front of a student. Besides, smoking is bad for your health. Luke righteously confiscated her cigarette. He had a point. Shizuka lowered her head. Sorry, I'll be more careful next time. Okay, I forgive you. Be careful next time. Having successfully turned the tables, Luke immediately prepared to make his escape. But, the teacher's calm voice came from behind him. Where do you think you're going? Well, so much for the flawless escape plan. This problem child is so much trouble. Shizuka rubbed her head and pushed herself up from the desk. So, regardless, according to your essay, you basically have no school life. Which means you don't have any friends either, right? Luke nodded calmly. Work takes up too much time, after all. Balancing work and life isn't easy. Just like you, sensei. You haven't balanced it well either, right? Being this old and still without a boyfriend. And so. Shizuka walked up to him, straightened his collar and the hem of his shirt, glanced at the book of strength he carried with him, and instructed the boy. Hold the book in front of your stomach. And hold it steady. What do you mean? Just then, a gust of wind blew past. A perfect straight punch. Luke was hit square inches the stomach by Shizuka, right through the book of strength. OF. Luke relaxed his tensed abdomen. He twisted his body slightly. Okay, no real pain. He breathed a sigh of relief. Thankfully, his stats were high enough that his stomach could take the hit. Seems like mentioning age or relationships really sets his teacher off. Honestly, this teacher didn't act much like a teacher. So, he cautiously asked, Sensei, have you eaten yet? Even though she had just vented her pent-up anger, Miss Hiratsuka's fist clenched again. Her mind filled with complaints about him. This guy's personality is just awful. Honestly, this student didn't act much like a student. Realizing his mistake, Luke quickly added. That's not what I meant. I was thinking of treating you to a meal, Sensei, as an apology. Hey, you don't need to bribe me. I'm not angry. Luke looked at the pen Miss Hiratsuka was gripping so hard it was creaking, then at her face, which was smiling but not really smiling. Miss Hiratsuka? Are you serious? Surprisingly, though, after taking another deep breath, Shizuka actually didn't get angry again. Maybe before, she really was just offended by the age comment. Continuing our previous topic. Shizuka asked. You haven't joined any club activities, right? Luke sensed something was off, but he couldn't lie yet. No. And no friends either? Nope. I knew it. Seeing his teacher suddenly full of energy, Luke was speechless. Does having no friends make you this happy? I knew it. I guessed as much. Otherwise, why would you be spouting nonsense day in and day out, imagining ghosts and things like that? You're being a bit rude now. Luke felt a dark line appear on his forehead, giving up on the idea of getting Miss Hiratsuka to accept this essay and boost his student occupation mission progress. Sensei, do you have any other questions? I'll just rewrite the essay. However, events still took an unexpected turn. Fine. Shizuka sat on the edge of the desk, lightly tapping her finger on her shoulder. However, your previous words deeply wounded a woman's heart. Therefore, I demand that you participate in service activities as punishment. That didn't sound like anything good. Besides, you don't seem wounded at all. If anything, you look kind of excited. Does punishing students make you this happy? That's a bit dark, don't you think? I'll write the essay properly, please, just let me off the hook this once. Shizuka ignored his words completely. She pushed off the desk with both hands, landing lightly on her feet. Without offering any further explanation about his so-called service activities, she simply urged him, come with me. Luke lowered his head, thought for a moment, and decided to offer a bribe. Sensei, if you drop the punishment, how about I give you a protective talisman? Shizuka's eyebrow shot up. Hurry up. How about 2? Fine. 5. That's the absolute limit. That's my bottom line. Shizuka said in an exasperated tone, stop trying to bribe your teacher with these weird things. Helpless, Luke could only follow. He had no more bargaining chips. Strange, his talismans usually sold quite well. Shizuka gently patted his back, puffed out her chest righteously, causing Luke to occasionally glance at her ample bosom straining against her shirt. How could a teacher possibly be swayed by your bribes? Teachers are very upright people. Give up on that idea. Luke could only follow Shizuka out of the office. After thinking it over, he felt he should still struggle a bit more. How about, I give you back the cigarette? I still have to go to work after school, after all. Right? Shizuka's steps faltered slightly. For a split second, her heart was shamefully tempted by the offer. Then, Luke's sly voice reached her ears, Sensei, looks like you were tempted. Shizuka clenched her fists. In that moment, she completely believed in the evil spirits Luke wrote about in his essay. This guy was a living example. No normal person could possibly be this awful. Chapter 5, Yuki no Shita Yuki no. In the end, Hiratsuka Shizuka resisted the temptation of the cigarette, her steps firm and purposeful as she led him to their destination. As they walked, Luke casually tossed the cigarette, which was basically trash anyway, into a nearby bin. He mentally calculated that he might have to go to his client's house a little later today for the exorcism ritual, because clients lived at varying distances. The appointment times he set were usually approximate. So, being a bit late wouldn't be a major issue. But to avoid the sun setting and night falling completely, he generally tried to arrive early if possible. After all, compared to the daytime, evil spirits always seemed a bit more active at night. In this line of work, you could never be too careful. Although, usually, clients who had the leisure to hire him for an exorcism ceremony. The strange occurrences in their homes were often caused by human factors or their own delusions. Rarely were there actual malevolent spirits involved. After all, if it were a truly powerful ghost, they would have already paid extra to have him exorcise it properly. "We're here." Hiratsuka-sensei stopped in front of a room that looked no different from any other classroom. The sign above the door was blank. But this must be the service club she mentioned. This school really had all sorts of weird clubs. Hiratsuka Shizuka forcefully pulled the door open, the change in pressure sending a gust of air sweeping through. Luke followed her inside, curiously looking around the classroom. Aside from a corner where desks and chairs were haphazardly piled up, the room wasn't much different from a regular classroom. So, he shifted his gaze to the only other person in the room. A gentle breeze from the window softly brushed past the girl. Strands of her glossy black hair occasionally swept across her delicate, fair profile. Her figure was slender, yet she sat perfectly straight, head bowed, intently reading the book in her hands. It seemed the sound of the door opening hadn't disturbed her in the slightest. In the soft light, the girl sitting by the window looked exceptionally captivating. She placed a bookmark between the pages and lifted her head. "Hiratsuka-sensei, I believe I've told you before, please knock before entering." Luke got a clear look at her face. Her features were symmetrical and refined, her eyes clear and bright. Long, thick eyelashes curled slightly upwards. Her hair was long and smooth, cascading naturally over her shoulders. She wore the same standard uniform as the other girls, but the aura emanating from her, the look in her eyes, gave her a uniquely distinct feel. "Oh? Did I not knock? I thought I did," Hiratsuka Shizuka said, sounding puzzled. Luke snorted inwardly. "Maybe a ghost knocked." The girl replied in a cool, clear tone, "That's because Sensei always pushes the door open immediately without waiting for an answer. Or maybe she really just barged in without knocking at all. Also, who is that dazed-looking fellow behind you?" The girl continued in that same cool tone, her eyes now sizing him up and down. Hiratsuka Shizuka clapped him on the shoulder. Oh, this is Luke Nova. He's the new club member I brought for you." Then, she introduced the girl to him. "Her name is Yukino Shita Yukino. The person who consistently holds the top spot in the entire grade for every exam." Luke gave a slight nod to Yukino Shita Yukino, whom he had vaguely heard of. He wasn't quite ready to refuse the well-meaning Hiratsuka-sensei just yet, otherwise, something even more troublesome would definitely happen. "Yeah, definitely." Hiratsuka Shizuka patted his back, presenting him like a product on display, and spoke to Yukino Shita Yukino. "As you can see, this is a guy who's all alone at school. Not only does he have a terrible personality, but he's also always secretive and holds unrealistic fantasies about the world." Luke explained, exasperated, "My personality is fine, and I don't have any unrealistic fantasies. I'm a normal person, not mentally ill." "See?" Hiratsuka Shizuka looked like she was dealing with a lost cause, sighing dramatically at Yukino Shita Yukino as she spoke, "So please let me leave him here. Help me straighten out his personality and worldview." Yukino Shita Yukino replied impatiently, "Sensei, for this kind of unrealistic fantasist, violence might be more effective than kind-hearted lecturing." Hiratsuka Shizuka, however, squeezed his shoulder defeatedly and said, "Can't be helped. The higher-ups have been strict lately, forbidding teachers from inflicting any kind of physical violence on students. Besides, this guy's physical fitness is too good, normal punches and kicks are useless." Luke turned his head away, speechless. Was that something a teacher should say out loud? It was truly disheartening. "So, just consider it my request. Isn't that the purpose of the service club? A request." Sigh. Yukino Shita Yukino laced her fingers together and let out a soft sigh, clearly reluctant. "Since it's Hiratsuka-sensei's request, I suppose I'll accept. However, I hope you won't bring any more strange people here next time, Sensei." In contrast, Hiratsuka Shizuka beamed with satisfaction, then quickly turned and left without a backward glance. "Well then, he's all yours." Luke watched Hiratsuka-sensei's retreating back, speechless. Her eagerness to leave was honestly staggering. This woman is truly mean-spirited. No wonder she's so pretty but still can't find someone she likes. I really hope she stays single forever. He was willing to trade all the merit he earned exorcising ghosts for that outcome. The clubroom door soon closed. Luke turned to look at the cool beauty, sizing her up. Just like her name suggested, Yuki means snow. She possessed an icy aura that made her difficult for ordinary people to approach. Although beautiful and graceful in her mannerisms, her outward demeanor likely deterred anyone less socially adept from initiating contact. However, he was ultimately just someone busy with work, not actually the silent, withdrawn loner he might appear to be. So, he pointed to the pile of desks in the corner and asked, "Can I use one of these desks?" Like a cat, she let out a noble and elegant sound of affirmation, then reopened her book, resuming her focus and serious reading. Keeping some distance from the girl, he arranged a desk and chair, took out the tissues he carried, gently wiped away the dust, and sat down comfortably. Actually, going to the client's place a bit later wasn't that big of a deal. It had been a while since he had the chance to enjoy the peace and quiet of the late afternoon sun nearing dusk. He wasn't really opposed to joining a club either. After all, the demanding exorcism work was just a habit he maintained. It wasn't like he couldn't reduce his caseload. Joining a club was a good way to enjoy the once-in-a-lifetime high school experience. But, this weird club called the Service Club. The name just didn't sound very inspiring. So, consciously or unconsciously, his gaze drifted towards the president of his newly joined club. He wanted to ask her about the activities of this service club. But seeing her focused and absorbed expression, he ultimately decided against breaking the tranquility the girl had created. Perhaps her keen senses picked up on his hesitation. Yukino put down her book and turned to look at him. "Is there a problem?" Since she had spoken first, he didn't hold back anymore and asked directly, "Yeah, there are some questions. For example, this service club, judging by the name, it's a bit strange. Right?" Luke didn't quite know how to phrase his question. The club's name just tended to conjure up unpleasant associations. Yukino instantly understood his problem. Hiratsuka Shizuka hadn't fully explained things to him. So she explained, when the wealthy, out of compassion, give to the poor, that is charity. Like providing aid to developing nations, feeding the homeless, or helping unpopular boys talk to girls, extending a helping hand to those facing difficulties, that is the purpose of this club. Yukino had stood up now, looking down at him slightly, and spoke with a measure of seriousness, "Welcome to the service club." Chapter 6, Hiratsuka Shizuka like a child, Yukino like an adult. Luke looked at the girl bathed in sunlight. There wasn't a shred of pretense in her eyes. So, basically, it's like being a detective, accepting requests from others and helping them solve their problems, right? Yukino gave a slight nod. You can understand it that way. Hiratsuka-sensei said that exceptional people have a duty to help those less fortunate. Since sensei entrusted you to me, I will see it through to the end. I will help you fix your flaws. I hope you can be grateful. Luke looked her up and down. How could this girl be so confident, and with such undeniable sincerity? Sensing his unrestrained gaze, Yukino took a small step back, quickly smoothed her clothes, and subconsciously crossed her arms defensively in front of her chest. From your beast-like gaze, I can already sense the harsh reality of your school life. Luke helplessly took off his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose and rubbing it gently. Aren't there any normal people like me in this school? Yukino-san, I don't have those kinds of beastly thoughts about you. So please don't strike that being bullied pose. Besides, why would you assume I'd definitely be interested in you? Isn't that the case? Yukino tilted her head, adopting a puzzled expression. Besides, your face makes me. Yukino cleared her throat lightly. Looking at the boy without his glasses, her inherent honesty prevented her from attacking his appearance unfairly. Luke looked back at her. Her cute face was still incredibly cute even with a cold expression. This girl's confidence was truly astounding, although she certainly had reasons to be proud. Yukino-san, I admit you're very cute and beautiful, but attraction and feelings are different things. After all, appearance and figure. His gaze lingered on Yukino's delicate features before inevitably drifting downwards, landing on the flat chest she was protectively guarding. He embarrassedly turned his head aside, the corners of his mouth twitching upwards. Trying to hold back his amusement, he couldn't stop a soft sound from escaping. Hey! That chuckle, sounding almost like mockery, made Yukino suspicious. Seeing Luke's turned back, she replayed his previous actions in her mind. Her quick thinking soon simulated the path of his gaze. Her perfectly curved jawline tightened slightly. She lowered the arms covering her chest, glanced down at herself, confirming the target of his gaze. Reacting swiftly, she quickly understood the reason behind his offensive scoff. Yukino glared unhappily, her cheeks puffing out involuntarily as she shot back rapid-fire sarcasm. No wonder Hiratsuka-sensei said you have a terrible personality. It seems the main reason is that your way of thinking differs from normal people. You have a human face, yet you still adhere to the behavioral patterns of a single-celled organism, just like a paramecium, acting solely on instinct. This kid has a really nasty personality, Luke thought. Yukino Shita Yukino finished venting her displeasure, slightly out of breath. Seeing Luke remain silent, she still glanced down at her chest, a faint sigh escaping her inwardly. And so, the clubroom fell back into the dead silence that had existed before his arrival. The classroom door burst open violently, and a whirlwind Hiratsuka Shizuka rushed in. Hey! I'm back. Yukino Shita. Yukino Shita Yukino's gaze shifted from Luke to the utterly self-absorbed Hiratsuka Shizuka. Please remember to knock, Hiratsuka-sensei. This teacher-student pair is such a headache, he thought. Oh, I just came to see how you two are getting along. Don't mind me. Yukino Shita Yukino felt the hardships of life keenly as Hiratsuka Shizuka's interested gaze swept back and forth between the two of them, sizing them up. You two are getting along well, huh? Eek, you should wear glasses less often. You look quite handsome without them. Those glasses really are too ugly, one look and you don't want to look again. Luke stared blankly at Hiratsuka-sensei. Where did you get that conclusion from? Does not fighting count as getting along well? He was about to devolve from a higher life form into a paramecium. So he spoke up decisively, calling Yukino Shita-san sharp-tongued is practically a compliment. What she says is just plain verbal abuse. Yukino Shita Yukino jumped in. Strange animals are protected, strange people are isolated. Mr. Human-shaped paramecium, I'm merely helping you face yourself. Hiratsuka Shizuka clapped him on the back. Ha 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 ha, don't mind it, that's all just superficial. Yukino Shita is a very gentle classmate. She'll definitely help you out. Gentle? Luke rubbed his forehead. If sensei is worried about me lacking social interaction in high school, I can easily join another club. As for the stuff in the essay, just consider it my naive fantasy. So, sensei, please, just let me off the hook. Hiratsuka Shizuka turned a deaf ear to his plea, her eyes lighting up instead. Looks like Yukino Shita's help is really having an effect. Yukino Shita Yukino shook her head. I haven't done anything. Luke shook his head. Sensei, I really don't need any help. Yukino Shita Yukino, however, seemed particularly serious. What nonsense are you talking about? With your terrible personality, if you aren't saved, you'll be completely unable to function in society. After all, if you can't even adapt to school, how can you adapt to society? Excuse me, I'm quite satisfied with my current profession. Dealing with ghosts is much better than dealing with people. Starting with the delusions again, Humphrey. Ghosts are a bit too far-fetched, don't you think? Smack. Alright. Hiratsuka Shizuka slammed her hand on the desk in front of him. She announced loudly, since neither of you believes the other words, whether they're true or not, just try to prove yourselves through your interactions from now on. So, how about a passionate competition? Both Luke and Yukino Shita Yukino stared at the now fired-up Hiratsuka Shizuka and immediately fell silent. Hiratsuka Shizuka looked at them strangely. Why do you both look so lethargic? Whose fault do you think this lethargic state is? Luke looked uncomfortably at Yukino Shita Yukino. She looked just as helpless. In that moment, Yukino Shita Yukino actually seemed somewhat agreeable. I refuse the competition. Without waiting for Hiratsuka-sensei to elaborate, Yukino Shita Yukino decisively moved to nip any further discussion in the bud. Objection overruled. Words are powerless. Only the results of actions can reveal the truth. Starting now, you will both guide those lost on life's path, save them, and thereby prove your own way of life. Let's see who truly understands life's principles better. Sensei, please refrain from acting in a way that doesn't suit your age. It's very unbecoming. Yukino Shita Yukino's cold rejection, though spoken calmly, pierced through Hiratsuka Shizuka's enthusiasm like a sharp buzz. Hiratsuka Shizuka said awkwardly, Ahem, I'm the teacher. If I say you compete, you compete. This woman has the body of a perfect older sister type, but acts like a child. She's the complete opposite of Yukino Shita Yukino. Sigh. Luke now only hoped the final school bell would ring soon. Chapter 7, Exorcism at Mira Yumiko's house. A teacher with an incredibly developed figure, yet the mind of a child. Beneath her chirpy chatter lay a hidden desire just to watch the drama unfold. Compared to her, Yukino Shita Yukino, with her figure flat enough to drive a car on, actually seemed like an adult. And the oblivious, mature-looking beauty with the childish mind was still spouting nonsense. How can you have no fighting spirit? Don't even think about just coasting through this. To ensure you both put your whole hearts into this battle, I've decided the final winner gets to order the loser around however they want. How about that? However they want? Luke murmured thoughtfully. Yukino crossed her arms over her chest, immediately entering defensive mode. Allow me to refuse. With such a dirty condition for the duel, I feel I might be violated. Seems like Yukino-san isn't confident about this duel. Hiratsuka Shizuka said slyly. Such a clumsy attempt at goading. Sensei, please don't treat me like a child. Yukino stared unhappily at Hiratsuka Shizuka. Looking back at Yukino, Hiratsuka Shizuka adopted a pitiful expression. Really? You won't do it? Yukino desperately wanted to ignore her gaze, but finally let out a resigned sigh. Fine. Although I hate being provoked like this, I'll agree. And I'll deal with this person while I'm at it. Ugh, how embarrassing. You're the top student year after year, yet your willpower is this weak? Luke complained inwardly, turning his head towards Hiratsuka Shizuka. Sensei, could you act a bit more like an adult? I accept joining the club activities, but let's just skip the duel. Luke looked at Hiratsuka Shizuka. He wouldn't be stubborn like Yukino, who'd jump into a pit just because someone dug it, confident she could leap over the pit itself. A mentally strong person wouldn't be swayed by external temptations or emotional provocations. Hiratsuka Shizuka grinned, her pretty nails tapping lightly on his desk. You won't have to rewrite your Japanese literature homework. And from now on, I'll also appropriately loosen up a bit. How about it? What is this? Testing a student with something like this? But he had to admit, it was a brilliant tactic. I accept. Luke immediately took the challenge. Because he would show Hiratsuka-sensei just how foolish her decision truly was. Good. By the way, I'll be the judge of victory or defeat. The scoring criteria will be based on my subjective opinions and biases. Good luck. Finally, a sound echoed through the classroom. Was that the end of school bell? It felt like ages. As a member of the Go Home Club, he hadn't heard that sound in a long time. With everything settled, Hiratsuka Shizuka eagerly fled the classroom, leaving the two of them behind. Yukino closed her book, put it away, turned, and left without another word. Time to get moving. Luke took out his phone, confirming today's destination. Although he was starting later than usual, looking at the client's address, it wasn't too far away. If he hurried after finishing, he should be able to get home around the usual time. A yellowish sky, crimson-dyed clouds, a cool breeze, and an angry Miroyumeko. Miroyumeko stared intently at him, her gaze filled with suspicion and even more wariness. Thinking back to the tennis battle during the day made her angry all over again. Hey! What are you doing hanging around my house? You're not some kind of pervert, are you? Luke looked at the address on his phone, feeling a bit helpless. He should have realized when he saw the client's name was Mira. This world really is small. Seeing him remain silent, Miroyumeko's expression changed, and she clutched her backpack to her chest, turning slightly away. You're not actually a pervert, are you? Luke rubbed his eyes. Usually, to make a good impression on clients, he didn't wear those ugly glasses during house calls. Mira-san, having a vivid imagination is a good thing. But there's no need to label everyone who walks past your house a pervert. Plenty of people walk by here. Are they all perverts? Hurry up and look at this address. Is this your house? Miroyumeko cautiously took a few steps closer, lowering her head to read the message on his phone. Hey! You! Miroyumeko's red lips parted slightly, but Luke quickly interrupted her casting. I was invited here to perform an exorcism ritual. Please don't let your personal feelings get in the way. It's better to check these things out sooner rather than later. Miroyumeko looked up at his serious expression. Although she didn't really believe ghosts existed, she couldn't stop her mother's decision. Plus, the strange occurrences at home had genuinely made her a little uneasy. It's my house. Then take me there. The sooner I solve this, the sooner I can get out of your sight. Luke said. Fine. Miroyumeko led the way, her voice tinged with confusion and doubt. Mom said she wanted to find an onmyoji to check the house, but I didn't expect it to be you. Hearing her confusion, Luke nodded. Please trust my professional skills. This is basically a family tradition for me. Quality work, guaranteed reputation. Despite his assurances, Miroyumeko's eyes remained skeptical. With Miroyumeko leading, he quickly arrived at her home. I'm home. Yumeko's back. Ah. And who is this? Mira's mother, who also had blonde hair, narrowed her eyes, looking Luke up and down. Even though he had changed out of his Sobuhai uniform and taken off the ugly glasses, standing next to Miroyumeko, who was also a high school student, made his identity fairly obvious. Seeing her mother's suggestive gaze and occasional soft sighs, Miro Yumiko quickly explained. This is the Onmyoji you were looking for. He is also my classmate. Miro Yumiko's voice grew quieter and quieter. Oh, so he's Yumiko's classmate. Miro-san, Miro Yumiko's mother, summarized. Hello, Miro-san. Luke reached behind him. The Peachwood exorcism sword was pulled from his item inventory. To outsiders, however, this action looked like a magic trick, as if he had conjured the sword from thin air. Usually, pulling off this little trick made most clients trust him completely. It was the first step in his exorcism procedure. The effect. Just seeing Miro Yumiko's astonished expression was enough. Luke glanced around the room's layout. Miro-san had already explained the situation in detail over the phone, so he didn't waste time with pleasantries and got straight to the point. Could you show me around the house so I can inspect it? Of course, please change into these slippers. Miro-san put aside her surprise and offered him a pair of guest slippers. Luke walked into the house, carrying his backpack. He made a fist, curling his forefingers into his palm, leaving only a tiny gap between them. Then, he pressed the fist against his eye. Peering through the small gap, he carefully scanned the entire living room. Finding no signs of ghostly mischief, he asked Miro-san to let him check the bedrooms. How about we check Yumiko's bedroom first? Miro-san suggested slyly. Okay. According to our phone conversation, Miro-san was the first one to notice the abnormalities, right? Luke nodded. Mom. Miro Yumiko blushed, protesting. Since starting high school, she hadn't invited any classmates over to play in her bedroom, let alone a male classmate. Do you really not want to solve this problem, Yumiko? Miro-san whispered in her daughter's ear. Ghosts are scary, you know, at night, I have Dad to hold me and protect me. But Yumiko will only have ghosts for company. Stop trying to scare me. Miro Yumiko quickly pushed her mother away. Miro-san, regardless of any other factors, I strongly suggest you let me thoroughly inspect your bedroom. Luke showed no hesitation whatsoever. It wasn't his bedroom, after all. Chapter 8, 13 Points of Strength. Miro Yumiko took a deep breath. Mentally, she found it hard to accept letting a male classmate into her bedroom, but in the end, she could only let out a helpless sigh. Fine. But let me say this first, you're not allowed to just look around randomly. Don't worry about your concerns. Please trust my professional ethics. I'm a new era exorcist with a 100% positive review rate. Luke showed Miro Yumiko a picture of his client reviews. The page full of positive comments stunned Miro Yumiko. Miro-san, mother, covered her mouth, chuckling hee hee. Miro Yumiko was also somewhat amazed. You actually printed all these out? Luke put the picture back in his bag, explaining the reason. After all, I'm too young. Some people mistakenly believe older exorcists are more capable, so I always need some external proof to dispel doubts and make my work easier. Fine. Miro Yumiko stood in front of her room, took a few deep breaths, mustered her courage, and pushed the door open. Then, she clenched her fists tightly and stared fixedly at Luke, like a little kitten whose territory had been invaded. Let me see. Without waiting for Miro Yumiko to ramble further, he quickly took his position and surveyed the entire bedroom through the small gap in his fist. The room was pink-themed. A large white dog plushie sat on the bed, cozy decorative pictures hung on the walls, and a soft carpet covered the entire floor. Beside a delicate little table stood a uniquely shaped lamp. The whole space radiated youth and dreams. He hadn't expected that Miro Yumiko, who meticulously styled herself to look mature, would have a room so overflowing with girlishness. A room full of life, yet without the abnormalities he was looking for. Luke lowered his fist. He hadn't detected any evil spirits through his special observation method. Not only were there no evil spirits, but there were no related traces either. Since that was the case, Luke waved his hand in the air twice, seemingly out of nowhere. Under the cover of this distracting movement, a talisman appeared in his hand, which he stuck onto the lintel above Miro Yumiko's bedroom door. Please take me to see the other rooms. The next few rooms were the same, he didn't see any ghosts. He could only stick talismans on the lintels of each bedroom door. These were his cheapest talismans, very simple to make, but their function was irreplaceable. They were designed to detect evil spirits. If one appeared nearby, the talisman would activate and spontaneously combust. He walked through the entire house again but still found nothing out of the ordinary. Luke thought for a moment, then took out his phone to review his conversation with Miro-san, mother. He couldn't be entirely sure if the strange situations Miro Yumiko encountered in this seemingly ordinary house were just their imagination or if an evil spirit truly existed. Therefore, he could only choose the safest approach for now. Miro Yumiko, when do you usually notice the abnormalities? Luke carefully asked Miro Yumiko for details. Miro Yumiko thought for a moment, then answered, I usually feel an unusual atmosphere before falling asleep at night or when I wake up in the middle of the night. The room seems to have a sense of oppression. Sometimes I even hear strange sounds, like someone whispering. Based on his experience, it didn't quite seem like the work of an evil spirit. Because if an evil spirit wanted to affect reality, it would usually leave traces. A room filled with human presence would have some of that presence erased by the spirit's abnormality. But right now, he hadn't seen any traces of an evil spirit in any room. So, his judgment leaned more towards it being Mira Yumiko's imagination. And if it really was Mira Yumiko's imagination, he wondered if he should tactfully suggest Mira Yumiko get her head checked by a psychiatrist. But saying that would probably get him beaten up easily. He glanced at the wary Mira Yumiko. So, after careful consideration, he took out a few more talismans from his bag. I didn't find any abnormal traces in the rooms. But I can't be certain it's all Mira Yumiko's illusion either. That's why I placed these talismans on the lintels of each room. If an evil spirit causes trouble, the talismans will burn. You should stick these few talismans around as well. His explanation was already very detailed. Okay, thank you. Mira-san, mother, accepted his talismans. Luke put away the items in his hand. Since Mira-san, mother, is my classmate's mom, I'll give you a discount this time. Only 5,000 yen will be fine. Mira-san, mother, didn't speak, but Mira Yumiko said resentfully, you didn't even really do anything, right? And you're charging 5,000 yen? Mira Yumiko, my appearance fee is quite expensive. This price is already the absolute lowest I can go. Luke scratched his head. But you. Ouch. Yumiko. Mira-san, mother, lightly tapped Mira Yumiko on the head, who let out a cute yelp. Sorry, Yumiko was a bit rude. Please take this. Mira-san, mother, handed him a large bill. It's fine. Luke indicated it didn't matter, happily accepting the banknote and watching his mission progress become 5,000 out of 500,000. After changing his shoes, he didn't forget to add a reminder, remember to check the number of talismans every day. If any have burned, please contact me by phone immediately. Okay, take care. Goodbye. After things wrapped up at the Mira residence, he went to 2 other houses to perform exorcisms. One of them actually did have an evil spirit lurking, which he took care of easily. His busy day finally came to an end, and he could rest peacefully. Luke walked along the usual path home. As he approached the small park closest to his house, just as usual, he unsurprisingly saw Mikaza waiting for him there every day, along with Annie sitting on a swing nearby, so bored she was about to fall asleep. This situation had been going on for a long time. The two of them waited here for him almost religiously, rain or shine. Just like always, he handed his backpack to Mikaza and made the same old request to both Mikaza and Annie. I've told you guys you don't need to wait for me. Just eat at home. Hearing his voice, Annie lowered the hands cupping her face and walked over, wearing her standard expressionless face. Give it up. She won't listen to you about this. You're already tired from work. We should help share some of the burden. Mikaza also said nonchalantly. Luke shrugged his shoulders and stretched lazily. Fine, fine. Let's go, let's head back. Today was really exhausting. Those 3 houses were farther than the last. Rushing around made my legs feel like jelly. Even walking is a pain now. Huh? Luke hadn't even finished speaking when the world suddenly spun sickeningly before his eyes. When his vision settled, he found himself being held in Mikaza's arms, Princess Carrie style. Annie calmly caught the backpack Mikaza tossed over. After hearing the boy say that, she had already guessed this would be the result. Luke said speechlessly, Mikaza, put me down. Annie walked ahead calmly. Mikaza, however, showed no reaction and simply carried him towards home, letting him struggle all he wanted. His 13 points of strength were like an ant before Mikaza. All his struggle seemed ridiculous. Besides, he estimated that even if his strength reached 20 points in the future, Mikaza would still treat him like a fragile vase. Chapter 9, Dinner. Inside Luke's home, white lights brightened the whole room. On the dining table, covered with a white tablecloth, all sorts of food were laid out. Luke and Mikaza Ackerman sat at the table, comfortably eating their late-night dinner. But even with so much food already on the table, the cookware on the stove was still working hard, a steamer letting off white steam, and a pot simmering with various ingredients. Chef Annie Lenhart stood off to the side, skillfully wielding the kitchen knife in her hand, simply cutting the tofu on the cutting board into chunks before tossing them all into the boiling pot, letting the bubbling water and seasoning simmer the tofu soup. Phew. Luke placed a soft-boiled egg into his rice bowl and gently mixed it. The white egg white blended with the equally white rice grains, then gradually became completely coated by the golden yolk. He picked up his chopsticks, lightly lifted some rice, and devoured it along with the stir-fried dishes in just a few bites. His rumbling stomach finally welcomed satisfaction again. It had been a long time since he'd eaten this late. This was the downside of joining a club. It was already 10, approaching 11 o'clock, and they were only just starting dinner. Otherwise, he'd already be comfortably curled up on the sofa watching TV, or playing games with the two of them. It felt really strange. Balancing school and work was ultimately difficult. In the past, he had always given up club activities, focusing all his energy on exorcising spirits for others to earn living expenses. After all, considering Mikaza Ackerman's appetite and his own, without a stable source of income, it probably wouldn't take many days before they could write a gourmet guide titled 100 Delicious Ways to Prepare Dirt. But now that he had some extra money, and with Hiratsuka Shizuka's request, it was time for him to replan his work schedule, so he wouldn't have to push himself so hard. Soup's ready. Annie Lenhart ladled out the soup, using a cloth to place the entire pot of tofu soup onto the table. There was easily enough food on the table for 7 or 8 people. Even though Luke and Mikaza had controlled their pace of devouring, they still managed to wipe out a small half before the soup even arrived. The three had lived together for a long time, so Annie didn't mind. She sat down in her chair, taking small bites of rice. Luke served soup for the three of them. He picked up one bowl of the hot soup, slowly sipped it, and immediately felt incredibly comfortable. He sincerely praised the blonde girl. Annie's cooking skills have improved. The tofu soup is delicious. He vaguely remembered when the three of them first started cooking. You couldn't exactly call it frantic, maybe just a complete mess. In a chef's eyes, the three of them were just ruining food. In a non-Myoji's eyes, they were performing some kind of mysterious summoning ritual. But to save their meager living expenses, the three of them still managed to force down the concoctions that could barely be called food. That day, he almost saw hell. Thinking back, it was truly a terrible memory. But later, as they cooked more, Annie and Mikaza's cooking skills gradually improved. They were no longer at the beginner level of too much water, add more flour, too much flour, add more water. Among them, Annie especially had a unique talent for cooking. Her skill level increased day by day, and now she was basically responsible for all the meals at home. Only when her schoolwork was demanding would Mikaza temporarily take over the cooking duties. As for him, he had long been raised into a useless bum. Where would cooking skills even come into play? You do it more, and naturally, you get better at it. Annie said calmly, slowly and elegantly opening her red lips, bringing the edge of the soup bowl gently to her mouth, blowing lightly to cool down the piping hot tofu soup. Why did you come back so late today? Mikaza took the opportunity to ask her question. Today, she and Annie had waited in the park for nearly 3 hours. Oh. It's not just today, I'll be coming back late for the next few days too. Luke explained the current situation to them, the teacher in charge of guiding student life. She asked me to join a club activity, so I'll be coming home later than usual. Mikaza took his soup bowl, refilled it for him, and asked with a hint of worry in her voice, then, will you be okay? Can't you find an excuse to quit the club? Luke shook his head calmly. It doesn't matter. Anyway, we're not that short on money now, and I've wanted to reduce my workload for a while. Once I clear the backlog of requests this weekend, I'll have some free time, which is perfect for experience in club life. Of course, he didn't hold much anticipation for the service club, which sounded like trouble. But since he had promised Hiratsuka-sensei, he would participate in the service club activities a few times first. If worst came to worst, he could just find an excuse to quit later. Seeing he had made up his mind, Mikaza didn't say anything more and continued eating. Luke watched Mikaza's movements. Unlike Annie's elegant and slow eating style, Mikaza ate quickly but without wolfing down her food. Her movements seemed very concise and powerful, silent and neat, just like the strictness you'd imagine from a soldier. He asked back, what about you two? Didn't any teachers ask you to join club activities? Mikaza said calmly, they did, but I refused. Luke's eyes lit up. He leaned forward and quickly pressed, what reason did you use to refuse? He wanted to use Mikaza's answer as a reference, maybe he could use it on Hiratsuka-sensei. Told the truth. I told the teacher I'm your maid and need to go home early to do housework and prepare dinner. Luke slumped back powerlessly. Well, he couldn't use that excuse. Sigh. So the teacher just agreed like that? No other reaction? Beside them, Annie gently wiped the corner of her mouth with a napkin and added, besides her eyes widening and her speech becoming a bit incoherent, she didn't trouble us further. Mikaza followed up, the teacher called both of us over together, so she easily confirmed the credibility of our words. Luke nodded. Alright then. By the way, you two don't need to spend all your time at home either. If there's a club you want to join, just go ahead and join. I'll be coming back late anyway, so you don't need to rush back. There's nothing I want to join," Annie said faintly. Mikaza didn't speak, but her meaning was about the same as Annie's. "Okay then. Have you run into any trouble at your school?" "No trouble," Mikaza Ackerman said softly. Annie rested her cheek on one hand. What trouble could she have? She's such a good fighter, no one would mess with her. The biggest trouble is probably just too many love letters and confessions, but her heart is completely set on you. Whether it's love letters or confessions, she just rejected them all directly, leaving no room for anyone else. You hardly see anyone confessing to her now. Luke nodded with satisfaction. That's good. Just reject love letters and confessions directly. He wouldn't allow anyone to try and steal what was his, and he believed Mikaza Ackerman's and Annie Lenhart's feelings for him wouldn't allow anyone else to interfere either. The number of love letters and confessions Annie gets is way more than mine, Mikaza added from the side. How did you handle them? He turned his head to look at Annie Lenhart. Hey. A beautiful smile unconsciously appeared on Annie's lips as she spoke softly. Luke looked at her, puzzled, not having heard what she said. Annie stretched lazily, stood up, and started gathering the empty plates. If you didn't hear, just forget it. Go take a bath quickly, it's already very late. Chapter 10, Annie Lenhart throws a straight ball. Inside the bathroom, a soft, light mist of water vapor filled the air, mixed with the fragrance of bath products. Water gurgled out from the faucet, hitting the surface of the water in the bathtub, creating a pleasant splashing sound. Billowing steam rose in the space, covering the bathroom mirror with a hazy fog, blurring the reflection within. The wall tiles gleamed warmly, and the heat of the water made the entire space cozy and relaxing. Light filtered through the translucent window curtain, creating soft halos and adding a touch of peace and tranquility. The bathroom became a hot spring-like sanctuary, allowing him to forget the worries and fatigue of daily life. There was nothing more relaxing than a bath after a busy day. Luke, having finished a day of studying and working, firmly believed this. He immersed himself in the warm embrace of the water, closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and let his muscles gradually release their tension under the water's buoyancy. In this quiet space, anyone could freely let their thoughts wander, undisturbed by the outside world. Creak. Luke looked up. It was Annie walking in. He leaned against the edge of the bathtub, sending her a questioning look. What's wrong? Annie Lenhart took off her hair tie, letting her full head of dazzling blonde hair cascade down her shoulders like a waterfall following gravity. She answered in the voice that was almost always incredibly calm, doing some work a maid needs to do, like helping the master bathe. Luke paused for a moment, looking up as Annie slowly undid her bindings. Droplets of water condensed from the ceiling mist landed on her beautiful collarbones, tracing down the curves towards the tempting cleavage. Annie Lenhart placed her hands on her fair, swan-like neck, gently smoothing her hair following its growth direction. Her graceful figure shimmered under the warm yellow light. His heart traitoriously skipped a beat. I'm coming in. Annie Lenhart walked to the side of the tub. Her delicate feet pushed her toes into the hot water, slowly testing the temperature. Ripples spread across the water's surface as Annie Lenhart's straight, slender legs slowly submerged. Her delicate fingers scooped up hot water, splashing it onto her body, making her skin seem even more radiant. The water isn't that hot today. Annie relaxed, gently exhaling the breath she'd been holding. Her flushed face and moist lips looked somewhat intoxicated. Luke answered, burying half his head in the water and blowing bubbles. Seeing Annie's blush, he felt as if he were drunk too. Annie slowly submerged her body into the water, letting out a long, contented sigh as well. But she hadn't forgotten her purpose for coming in. She turned her head towards Luke and picked up a scrubbing towel from the nearby shelf. Turn around. Luke turned around, pressing his hands on the edge of the tub. Although Annie had helped wash his body before, recently it had always been Mikaza accompanying him. Bathing together again after so long made his heart pound uncontrollably. Luke closed his eyes, like fish on a cutting board, waiting for Annie's action. Annie pressed the pads of her fingers onto his back, a few fingers gently gripping his shoulder. Her other hand, holding the scrubbing towel, swept across his back, neither too lightly nor too heavily. Ho! A familiar sensation washed over his body. Luke breathed out comfortably. The rough texture felt very good, the slight pain made his tense back muscles loosen up. Compared to the weak and ineffective bath brush, he still preferred this slightly more violent scrubbing towel. Annie skillfully maneuvered her arm, leaving red marks across his back. He didn't feel much pain, instead, it felt rather comfortable. Annie's grasp of his tolerance threshold was practically perfect. When Annie's arm left his body, Luke comfortably moved his shoulders, but his nose caught a strange fragrance. He felt something soft against his back. Annie rested her chin on his shoulder. Me too. Her cryptic words made Luke utterly confused. He turned his head sideways to look at the blushing blonde girl. What? After dinner just now, the question you asked me? Annie Lenhart said softly. The scrubbing towel rubbed against his front, but due to the position, the scrubbing lacked some force this time. He didn't care about that anymore, though, only listening as Annie continued, the love letters and stuff, I threw them all away. The confessions and stuff, I rejected them too. I thought so. Luke swallowed dryly, trying to push down the impulse rising within him. Not only that. Annie Lenhart's fragrant breath tickled his ear, carrying charm, her voice carrying charm as well, just like that gloomy girl, I'm also only thinking about you. Luke's body was clearly soaking in warm water, yet for some reason, a shiver ran through him, like an electric shock making him tingle all over. At all times. Soft breath blew into his sensitive ear. After the clouds scattered and the rain cleared. Idiom implying intimacy occurred. Note, should I write lemons? I haven't decided whether to write it or not. Comment your opinions, in the bedroom. Luke looked at his constitution attribute, which had dropped from 10 points back down to 9, and felt like crying but had no tears. This was the consequence of excessively indulging in temptation. This was the punishment for acting on impulse. I've been wounded by bedroom affairs, becoming so frail. Starting today, I will exercise. Luke firmed his resolve. Annie looked at her lover beside the bed, contemplating life. This was nothing strange. During his sage time, he would always just stare blankly at one spot, thinking about who knows what. Wiping her body with a tissue, she asked, I'll turn off the lights and rest now? Grab me some water while you're at it, I have no strength left. Annie's finger pressed the light switch. The room instantly darkened, leaving only the glow of the streetlights outside and the cold moonlight and starlight filtering in. Water. Luke took the cup and thirstily replenished his fluids. Closing his eyes, as usual, he began to scan his mission progress. Occupation mission, exorcist, kick these ghosts' butts. Help others with supernatural problems, 9 out of 10. Occupation mission, student, study hard, improve daily, the duty of every student. Complete homework assignments, 40 out of 50. Occupation mission, transmigrator, change the life trajectory of world characters, 0 out of 3. Life mission, labor creates life's value. Earn 500,000 yen through work, 25,000 out of 500,000. However, a thought flashed through his mind. He called out to the blonde girl, who had closed her eyes to rest, Annie, don't sleep yet, do me a favor. Annie slowly opened her eyes, her blue pupils looking at him quizzically. Luke first transferred 500,000 yen to Annie's account. You do this. Give me a job or a task, and after I complete it, you transfer the 500,000 yen back to me from this account. Luke explained his plan to her. Ah. The exhausted Annie stared straight at him. Although she didn't know what crazy idea he was having now, she just agreed faintly. Issue a job, right? Right. So Annie closed her eyes again. Let's sleep. Luke could only try to bargain with his maid again. Can we change it to something else? Annie took a deep breath but still spoke faintly, go play with my casa. Forget it, let's just sleep. Luke pulled the covers over himself. Having you girls around is truly a blessing. Chapter 11, Event Card. The morning sunlight gently pierced through the gaps in the curtains, sprinkling into the quiet corners of the room. It was that time again, the wake-up call most students dreaded. Annie Lenhart was slowly woken by the alarm clock behind her. Looking at the still soundly asleep Luke, she carefully slipped out of his embrace, gently freeing the hair pinned beneath her head. She turned off the noisy alarm. Although she really wanted to lie in the warm bed a little longer, time didn't quite permit it. She gently shook Luke with her hand, her voice soft, time to get up. Birds chirped merrily from the treetops. The window, opened sometime during the night, let in a fresh breeze that rustled the leaves with a soft swish-swish sound. Everything seemed so cheerful. Only the groggy Luke, finally opening his eyes under Annie's persistent calls, seemed less than happy. Looking at the blonde girl so close, he could even smell the faint fragrance coming from her. Rubbing his sleepy eyelids, he tried to stall. I'm getting up. After saying that, he closed his eyes again, savoring the gentle breeze blowing in from the window. Every time he had to get up for school, the bed always felt so comfortable it was hard to leave. His body would feel as soft as the cotton inside the quilt. Seeing Luke, who claimed he was getting up but still had his eyes closed with an enjoying smile on his lips, and he wasn't surprised. She skillfully grabbed clothes from the shelf one by one and tossed them like darts onto his face, piling them up. After being suffocated under the clothes pile for a moment, Luke helplessly pulled his head out, forcing himself to get dressed, his mind repeatedly drifting towards the upcoming weekend holiday. Sigh. Life is so hard. Annie picked up the prepared underwear and comforted him. It's almost the weekend. You can rest then. Luke sat slumped on the bed, listlessly tilting his neck, looking at the blonde girl's beautiful body. Annie slowly got dressed, her movements still calm and unhurried under the boy's gaze, each step appearing methodical. Luke started getting dressed too. Once dressed, she took out her phone, her fingers tapping lightly on it. I transferred back the money you sent me yesterday. Oh. After a while, he finished dressing, and the transfer arrived. Luke stared at the panel, looking at his mission log. 525,000 out of 500,000 mission complete. Notification, life mission, labor creates life's value. Earn 500,000 yen through work, 525,000 out of 500,000, completed. You have received a reward, event card. Event card, when you obtain this item, a brand new challenge is approaching. Please follow the item's guidance to the destination within the specified time. Note, succeeding in the challenge will grant rich rewards. If you wish to abandon the challenge, you can destroy this item to signify ending the challenge. Countdown, 2:00:00. He hadn't expected that asking Annie to assign him a simple job, which he then completed, would actually count towards the mission progress. What a pleasant surprise. However, the reward for completing the mission, the event card, actually had a time limit, and he didn't even know the challenge content. How troublesome. This was the first time he'd encountered such a situation. Luke thought for a moment. Since he couldn't determine if the challenge involved evil spirits, it was probably best to bring all his equipment just in case. He continued browsing the system, checking for the latest mission. Every time a life mission was completed, the system would issue a new one, never giving him a break. Furthermore, he wasn't allowed to actively abandon the issued missions. Only if he failed to complete a life mission for too long would the system replace it with another one. Notification, you have received a new life mission. As a top figure in the exorcism industry, you need an event to prove your outstanding abilities. Solve a ghost god incident alone, 0 out of 1. He carefully read the mission description again. Solve a ghost god incident. The corners of his mouth involuntarily drooped. The mission requirement he was seeing now felt like the system was intentionally trying to trouble him. Asking him to challenge a ghost god all by himself? It was uncertain who would be solving whom. Compared to an evil spirit that could be called a ghost god, what kind of small fry was he? Luke speechlessly closed the panel. This stupid system, having it was truly his blessing or misfortune. It looked like this mission would most probably fail. Mikasa, help me get my treasure chest out, I need to use it today. Luke walked out of the bedroom, calling for the black-haired beauty. Okay. Mikasa responded. Yumeko, time for breakfast. Coming. Mom. Yumeko sat at her vanity table, carefully applying mascara. As the central figure of the top normie group in her class, she naturally accepted the support of others. But as the queen, she still needed to show her beautiful side to her subjects and friends. She put in a lot of effort for this, for example, waking up early every day to put on makeup. Putting away her cosmetics, Yumeko looked at herself in the mirror with satisfaction. Still beautiful today, nothing needed adjusting. She stood up, grabbed her school bag and phone, and glanced at the time. Ah. I'm going to be late. She glanced at the intact talisman on the door lintel, muttering something about settling scores with Luke after school. And ran out of the room. Every day is like fleeing a disaster. Mira-san, mother, sat in her chair, watching her darting daughter, sighing speechlessly. Every morning when I wake you up, you whine about being sleepy, and then you still have to put on makeup, even though you're cute without it. Oh, Mom. Stop nagging. I'm leaving now. Yumeko sat near the entryway, a piece of bread dangling from her mouth, quickly putting on her jacket and stuffing her feet, clad in black mid-calf socks, into her shoes. Sigh. Youth is wonderful. Unlike me, I get sleepy again just a little while after waking up. Time for another nap. Mira-san, mother, yawned and headed towards her own bedroom. Yumeko stomped her foot speechlessly. Comparisons are infuriating. Yumeko. Just as she was about to leave, Yumeko inexplicably heard someone call her name. She whipped her head around, calling out uncertainly, Mom, did you call me? But her mother was no longer in the living room. Strange. Yumeko took a puzzled bite of her bread, pushed open the front door, and began her race against time. Back in her bedroom, having just lain down to rest, Mira-san, mother, saw the perfectly fine talisman on her own door lintel. Oh dear. I forgot to check. She remembered she needed to check if the talismans in the other rooms were okay. Wearing slippers, she went to Yumeko's bedroom and couldn't help but wrinkle her nose slightly. What's that smell? She detected a burnt odor in the air. Mira-san, Mother looked up at the lintel of Mira Yumiko's bedroom door. The talisman there was conspicuously missing. So, she lowered her head. A small pile of burnt paper ash, and a section of the carpet scorched by high heat. Seeing this, she frantically picked up her phone. Chapter 12, Attack of the Mannequins. Mira Yumiko walked along the road to school, her steps quick, almost like she was running. Although no one was chasing her, her expression held a hint of worry and panic. She kept glancing back at the empty street behind her. The usually bustling road was now devoid of a single living soul. The presence of people seemed to have been sliced away from the street. But the voice calling her name kept echoing in her ears, getting closer and more frequent. Remembering the strange events that had happened at her house before, she became vigilant. She quickened her pace, wanting to get off this street as fast as possible. Just then, a sudden, clear gust of wind blew over. Mira Yumiko instinctively shielded her eyes with her arm, trying to block the dust. The wind whipped her skirt around, outlining the beautiful shape of her legs. Soon, the alert Mira Yumiko sensed something was wrong. Why was this wind mixed with the smell of damp earth and rotten wood? She was on a concrete paved road. How could a sunlit street have this kind of smell? Mira Yumiko thought it was her imagination. But the smell clinging to her nose and mouth, like foul mud being stir-fried in a pot, was undeniably real. Peeking through the gap in her arm, she slowly opened her eyes a little wider. And then she froze. What met her eyes wasn't the usual ordinary street. The tall surrounding walls were gone too. Instead, there stood an ancient castle beneath a sky full of dark clouds. The sky, which had been clear and sunny just moments ago, was now completely overcast. The surrounding earth, mixed with decaying plants, gave off a putrid stench. Mira Yumiko. That strange voice sounded again, calling her name. The bizarre change of scenery, the real smell perceived by her senses, the deep whisper drilling into her ears. Her face turned pale and weak. Mira Yumiko used the last ounce of her strength to tell herself, everything before her was just a terrifying illusion born of fear. But the sense of reality processed by her mind pinned her reason and struggle to the ground, grinding them relentlessly, telling her that all of this was absurdly, ridiculously real. And so, Mira Yumiko numbly pushed open the castle gate. As if she had been here many times before, she wandered familiarly through the ancient castle, heading steadily upwards. A crackling fireplace, animal head trophies hanging high on the walls. She walked down a corridor lined with countless rooms. As if hypnotized, she didn't know how long she walked, until the sound of a cat's meow reached her ears. Meow. Her dazed mind struggled and broke free from the confusion. Fake. This is fake. Like a sudden enlightenment, her mind saw through everything before her. She returned from that ancient castle back to reality. Ah! Mira Yumiko screamed in terror, her eyes wide, staring at everything before her in the real world. Before her stood rows upon rows of mannequins. Black and white mannequins scattered haphazardly, their bodies covered in scorched black marks. Although they were faceless mannequins, Mira Yumiko could still feel the presence of living beings from these inanimate objects. Their featureless heads seemed to stare at her through the plastic faces, filled with malicious intent. Mira Yumiko trembled uncontrollably, her legs frozen as if under a spell, unable to move. Click. Clack. The mannequins moved. Manipulating their stiff limbs, they approached Mira Yumiko like beasts. Even from a distance, Mira Yumiko could smell the scent of burning plastic coming from them. As the mannequins continued to move, their solid plastic limbs seemed to come alive, gaining joints and manipulating their bodies with eerie flexibility. Faster and faster. Help. Stay away. Mira Yumiko's voice choked with tears. She pushed herself against the nearby wall, gathering her remaining courage, and lifted her leaden legs to flee in panic. It proved that once the initial shock wore off, fear couldn't completely restrain human action. Mira Yumiko's pace quickened. As someone who exercised regularly, her speed increased rapidly, far outpacing the pursuing mannequins. Feeling slightly relieved, the panicked girl saw the stairs just ahead. But as she ran, she suddenly felt something hook around her ankle. Her body, restricted by her ankle, uncontrollably pitched forward. Her knees slammed hard onto the filthy ground, and she couldn't help but cry out in pain. Ah! It hurts. Mira Yumiko clutched her injured leg, looking at the familiar blonde-haired doll that had appeared at her feet. She couldn't remember when she got this doll, but she vaguely recalled it belonged to her. Yet now, it had appeared here and tripped her. Could it be that the soft whispers in the night before were its doing? No. Mira Yumiko watched the slowly approaching mannequins, her eyes growing wetter. She pushed herself backward with her hands, inching towards the stairs behind her. Help. Following the marker from the event card, he slowly reached the destination. Although he might be late today, he couldn't worry about that now. Looking at the commercial building abandoned for years, Luke walked straight in. The moment his foot stepped inside the building. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Luke jumped up in pain. He felt a burning sensation in his abdomen. Luke quickly lifted his shirt. The talisman he once wore there had now turned into paper ash, which he brushed off onto the floor. His specially made clothes hadn't caught fire from the burning talisman. This talisman, which he used to warn him of nearby evil spirits, had now burned completely. Looks like this challenge was supernatural related. It had been a long time since this talisman had been ignited. Seems like things were going to be troublesome today. The next second, the peachwood sword appeared instantly in his hand. Luke gripped the weapon tightly, focused his spiritual senses, and climbed the stairs, following the direction the malice emanated from. Help! The cry for help sounded strangely familiar. Luke quickened his pace. With light steps, he ascended the stairs easily, covering a floor in just 2 or 3 bounds. Soon, he saw a fallen blonde girl, and a mannequin with its arm outstretched. No time to react. He charged forward immediately. Against evil spirits possessing objects like this, the peachwood sword wasn't very effective. Retracting the peachwood sword, he pulled out the Book of Strength. F equals ma. He threw a punch with all his might, striking the mannequin. Like being hit by a car, the mannequin's chest caved in, and it flew backward. The evil spirit possessing it was directly knocked out, and the mannequin returned to its normal, unremarkable state. The sound of the impactful blow faded. Miro Yumiko, through tear-blurred eyes, saw Luke standing beside her, holding a book in his left hand, and his right hand clenched into a fist. You. Luke turned his head. Oh, it was a familiar face. Oh, it's Mira-san. I thought the voice and figure looked familiar. Don't worry, I took care of that thing. Having survived such a terrifying encounter, Mira Yumiko was speechless now. She could only shake her head frantically, numbly pointing towards the other side. Luke followed her pointing finger curiously, turning his head. And then he saw a whole group of similar mannequins. Chapter 13, took 2 punches and 3 kicks in one go. Seeing the sea of mannequins, Luke was genuinely scared. From an exorcist's perspective, ordinary souls weren't actually terrifying, nor did they possess the ability to harm or kill people. In fact, you could say ordinary souls were far weaker than humans with physical bodies. There's a fitting term: humans and ghosts walk different paths. Though they shared the same world, humans and ghosts were like beings from separate dimension. Only a small fraction of humans had strong enough spiritual senses to perceive the existence of the other world. And while souls could observe humans, crossing the boundary between the human and ghost realms to interfere with the human world required some essential conditions. For example, a spiritual beacon formed by a human actively observing and focusing on them. But this method not only scared humans, it scared ghosts too. Some ghosts might be happily playing around, only to suddenly find themselves face to face with a human, getting scared out of their wits. Even if they weren't scared away, if an ordinary person mustered their courage and threw a punch, the human, possessing a physical body, could still take them down. Another method was possessing an object, turning it into a spiritual vessel. But objects suitable for possession were extremely rare. Usually, only items deeply cherished by a resentful spirit in life could become spiritual vessels. Ordinary ghosts, even resentful spirits formed from hatred, could easily be dealt with. But souls possessing objects were more troublesome. And now, seeing so many possessed mannequins, could they all be spiritual vessels? Luke prepared to test the waters. Miro Yumiko, seeing Luke, who had just sent a mannequin flying with one punch, felt her panicked heart settle somewhat. But the eerie, haunting call still relentlessly wrapped around her ears. Miro Yumiko. Panicked, she grabbed onto Luke's trousers with her hand. Lacking a sense of security, she was like a drowning person unconsciously grasping at nearby driftwood. Luke, who was just about to charge forward, felt a tug below. He stumbled, nearly tripping. Hey! Why are you grabbing my pants? Luke looked down at the blonde girl, crying pitifully, looking like a weeping pear blossom. The weak Mira-san is actually quite cute, he thought. But, she seemed terrified. Luke sighed and comforted her. Don't worry, I'll protect you. I don't know if this helps, but... That voice, I keep feeling like someone is calling my name. Miro Yumiko told him. Luke took this seriously and pulled out a talisman. Here, hold on to this talisman. Miro Yumiko felt her mind suddenly become very clear, and the lingering whispers in her ears vanished. It's gone. Gee, good luck. Miro Yumiko tightly clutched a corner of the talisman, holding it to her chest and gently cheering him on. Her eyes, washed clear by tears, sparkled brightly. Her slightly wrinkled nose and pouting lips adorned her pitiful face. Isn't his cuteness a bit rule-breaking? Luke's heart skipped a beat. He quickly turned his head back to stare at the approaching mannequins. There were quite a few of them, and the peachwood sword was useless against these things. He tightened his grip on the book of strength in his hand, and holding a talisman in the other. Help me hold my backpack. I'll clash with them. I refuse to believe they're really that tough. Miro Yumiko looked at the boy standing tall and facing forward, her eyes filled with expectation. Then she saw Luke run back, head tucked, scattering over a dozen talismans into the air. He took 2 punches and 3 kicks in one go. Damn, they really are that tough. Luke solemnly observed the mannequins before him. These things had actually become spiritual vessels. This meant each ghost was gradually adapting to its body, their strength still increasing. Right now, they could already exert the power of an ordinary person. Alone, whether using his 16-point strength fists or talismans that could suppress or eliminate the evil spirits within them, he couldn't achieve much effect. He simply couldn't defend against their attacks coming from all directions by himself. A righteous group beat down. This was big trouble. Miro Yumiko's heart plummeted completely. Tears were about to burst forth, a stark contrast to her usual proud and confident style. Maybe you should just run by yourself. Don't worry about me. The blonde girl said fearfully. Is this kid scared silly? Luke glanced at her, then rummaged through his backpack, pulling out a bottle of bright red liquid. Looks like I'm gonna bleed today. Luke said, trembling, reluctantly uncorking the bottle. He applied the hot blood, which his friend had gone through quite the trouble to find for him, onto the blade of the sword. He fiercely drew the reddened beechwood sword, stepped forward, and struck the foremost mannequin. Instantly, the soul within the mannequin melted away like snow encountering fire. Luke didn't dare waste a single drop of the precious hawk blood. Using all his strength, he struck down the mannequin after mannequin, scattering their souls. One by one, the mannequins fell, but the hawk blood was being used up faster and faster. Luke quickly stopped his attack, looking at the once again dry beechwood sword and the remaining half bottle of hawk blood. These mannequins were becoming increasingly attuned to the souls within them. The amount of hawk blood needed to drive the souls out was increasing. And it wasn't just the per unit consumption. Facing dozens of mannequins, his meager amount of hawk blood was like trying to put out a cartload of burning firewood with a cup of water. In fact, even against the initial mannequins that weren't fully integrated with their bodies, his amount of hawk blood wouldn't have been enough to eliminate all of them. The hawk blood definitely wasn't enough. Luke painfully tightened the cap. The hawk blood already used was truly water spilled, impossible to recover. Are you okay? Miro Yumiko asked with concern. Heartache? Luke answered truthfully, quickly stuffing the hawk blood back into his backpack. As for his other items, he didn't plan on using them either. They were all single-target items anyway. Facing such a large number of evil spirits, maybe if he threw in all his assets, he'd have a chance. But then, he'd have to live the rest of his days clutching steamed buns with not a drop of oil in his vegetables. Luke slung the backpack onto his back. Miro Yumiko watched him nervously. We might die here today. Luke said faintly. Miro Yumiko's hand clutching her clothes tightened instantly, her expression changing. Just kidding, stop teasing you. Luke smiled and extended his hands towards the girl. Before the girl could react, in a daze, she was swept up into Luke's arms in a princess carry. Miro Yumiko suddenly blushed. Her hands tightly gripped his shirt, resting her head against his shoulder, feeling an overwhelming sense of security. Her thoughts ran wild, but then she snapped back to reality and quickly shook her head. Hey, don't you dare wipe your snot on my shirt. Luke warned the girl, alarms blaring in his head. MMPH, when did I do that? Miro Yumiko poked him resentfully. Luke was very strong. Even carrying a backpack and a pretty, cute burden in his arms, it didn't affect his ability to pull away from the mannequins at all. We're here. Luke reached the building's exit. A few more steps would count as failing the challenge. Whether for the mission or his professional ethics as an exorcist, for any reason, he couldn't let those mannequins run wild. He gently put Miro Yumiko down. Get out. Even though your leg is injured, this is as far as I can take you. Just bear the pain and get yourself out. Luke told Miro Yumiko, reaching into his pocket. Huh? What about you? Miro Yumiko heard this and asked worriedly. Me? Of course, I have to deal with those things behind us. Can't let them get out, otherwise, more people would get hurt or possibly die. Besides, didn't I promise to protect you? Luke said faintly, taking out his phone and tossing it to the girl. Miro Yumiko caught the phone, the tear tracks on her face already dry. She stared blankly at the reliable boy. Call the person I have saved, a shady merchant. Tell her it's an emergency, she'll tell you what to do. Then go to school. Anyway, get as far away from here as possible. Luke saw the dazed Miro Yumiko and couldn't help but frown and snap. What are you standing there for? Hurry up, run outside and make the call. Thank you. Miro Yumiko bit her lip, whispering softly. She frantically took out the phone and stumbled away. Remember, you must call, and then get as far away as possible. Luke reminded her again. He then turned his head to look at the mannequins that had already come down, pressing a hand to his heart. It's been a long time since I used my trump card. No idea if I can take them all out. Chapter 14, Wing Chun, Master Meow. Luke lightly pressed his hand against his heart. Hidden there was his greatest trump card, the most powerful talisman among all exorcism talismans. Exorcism talismans were the most important reward he had received from the system. No, the most important was actually the first reward, the newbie starter pack that gave him Mikaza Ackerman and Annie Lenhart. Even though the two of them had drained his constitution from its former 13 points down to the current 10. Okay, yesterday it had already been drained down to 9 points. But regardless, Mikaza Ackerman and Annie Lenhart, who were like family, were the most important, without a doubt. And the second most important were the talismans. Talismans were the reward he received from his first exorcist occupation mission. They were versatile and renewable. The categories of exorcism talismans were, Evil Spirit Detection Talisman, the ones installed at Miro Yumiko's house, max limit, 50, regeneration time, 0.5 days per talisman. Curse Removal Talisman, the one given to Miro Yumiko, max limit, 5, regeneration time, 15 days per talisman. Evil Spirit Extermination Talisman, the one scattered when surrounded by mannequins, max limit, 20, regeneration time, 1 days per talisman. Resentful Spirit or Stronger Evil Spirit Detection Talisman, the one that burned before entering the building, max limit, 2, regeneration time, 10 days per talisman. And the only powerful talisman with a negative effect, Sacrificing Life Force to gain power, max limit, 1, regeneration time 1 year. Luke suppressed the fluctuations in his mood. Having experienced many battles, he no longer felt the initial fear he once had when facing evil spirits. However, this time he was really going to feel heartache, not the kind from wasting hawk blood, but physical heartache. Luke inwardly groaned. The pain from using this talisman a year ago still lingered in his memory. Watching the blonde girl gradually disappear from his sight, Luke turned back. The mannequins relentlessly approached, their plastic bodies continuously emitting creaking sounds. Except for their features, hair, and body color, the numerous mannequins, incredibly similar to normal humans, flexibly strode forward, gradually closing in on his position. This bizarre scene was enough to be the climax of a horror movie, unfolding right here in this abandoned commercial building. Luke calmed his mind, hardened his resolve internally, and began his movements. Slowly sinking into a horse stance, Luke clenched his fists with 4 fingers, thumbs lightly raised, and tapped forcefully on both temples' open eyes. Retracting his thumbs, revealing his index and middle fingers, he gently bent them, crossed his arms, and placed his fingers on the shoulder acupoints of the opposite sides ignite fire. His left hand clasped over his heart, his right hand clenched into a fist, and he struck it heavily break curse. With his strike, the incantation hidden within his heart began to surface on his body, spreading towards his limbs and head. Waiting for the incantation to spread. Mira Yumiko should be gone by now. He checked again, confirming Mira Yumiko was truly out of sight. He finally relaxed. Now no one could hold him back. Turning back, he clenched both fists and suddenly roared, 8 inner gates. Gate of Death, open. Finally, no one could interrupt him from shouting the move name. Finally, no one else was around. After Mira Yumiko was far away, his remaining sense of shame finally allowed him to shout this embarrassing move name. The last time he used this talisman, he couldn't shout it because someone was nearby. This time, his wish was finally fulfilled. However, looking at the bald heads of the mannequins, Luke felt that the 8 inner gates was somewhat inappropriate, and the Gate of Death sounded a bit unlucky. Luke pinched his chin, thought for a moment, made up his mind, and spoke again. I retract my previous statement. This is my ultimate move. Take this, Frieza. Next up is the 20xk Ecchi. As he satisfyingly shouted the move name 20xk Ecchi. Fueled by his soaring emotions, the incantations on his body swept across him faster and faster, quickly covering his entire form. The power of this incantation relied on various aspects of the human body. Basic physical quality was its foundation, heightened emotions determined its activation speed and duration. Luke felt his strength and agility increase. His drained constitution gradually recovered, and his spirit soared rapidly. His toes tapped lightly on the floor. His body felt as light as a falling feather. Luke's mind was crystal clear, the surroundings, including everything behind him, seemed imprinted in his mind. Everything around him was perfectly clear. The mannequins unconsciously stopped their steps. The disgusting creaking sounds ceased abruptly. The abandoned commercial building returned to silence. The reason they stopped was because Luke had changed. In their worldview, The light emanating from Luke, previously like a candle flame, had now become a raging inferno in their eyes, illuminating the surrounding darkness. Just getting close felt scorchingly hot. And now, this flame was no longer avoiding them, the fire was spreading towards them. Luke lightly tapped his palm on a nearby mannequin. The incantations on his body spread like ink dropped into water, dyeing the mannequin. He who touches pitch shall be defiled. The incantations wrapped around the souls inside the mannequins, strangling them one by one. Like a wolf among sheep, he was invincible. These mannequins, who were acting so arrogantly just moments ago, could now only circle around him hesitantly, afraid to approach. And as their comrades fell one by one around them, they abandoned their struggle and scattered, trying to flee. But, all of this? Trying to run now. Too late. Luke pressed his palms together, concentrating half of his remaining incantations, and slammed his hands onto the ground. A spiderweb formed of incantations enveloped all the remaining mannequins. The black incantations seemed like gates to hell, extending countless tendrils that devoured the souls within the remaining mannequin bodies completely. Phew. Luke wiped the sweat from his brow, scanned his surroundings, and saw no more living mannequins. But the challenge wasn't over yet. He had less than half of the incantation power left. He took a step and headed upstairs. His superhuman spiritual sense guided him. After climbing 2 flights of stairs, his senses told him that a powerful evil spirit was getting closer. On the 4th floor lobby, Luke looked at the doll hiding the powerful evil spirit before him. It was currently being held in the mouth of a calico cat. Luke stared at this strange combination. The feeling of malice coming from the blonde doll confirmed it was the boss of this challenge. It was Miro Yumiko's doll, he vaguely remembered it. But what was the deal with this cat? His spiritual sense told him this cat didn't have the aura of an evil spirit. Perhaps this doll is an evil spirit that only targets humans, and this cat is just a stray living here or wandering through? A guess flashed through his mind. And this guess wasn't impossible. Especially some word-based evil spirits, coded amatypes, fundamentally couldn't deal with creatures other than humans. After all, you couldn't expect animals to understand human language. So, he spoke, "Kitty, can you give me the doll?" Meow. The kitty's fur stood on end. It pinned the doll under its paw, its feline eyes staring fixedly at Luke. The meaning was unmistakable. Sigh, sorry then. I really need it. Luke gathered his remaining incantation power. Of course, he wasn't trying to kill the cat, just trying to match the cat's speed to grab the doll as quickly as possible. Luke tapped his foot lightly and rushed forward, faster than an ordinary cat. And then, he saw the other possibility. He didn't want to see this cat was no ordinary kitty. Meow. The cat stood up on its hind legs, gently spreading its 2 front paws, striking a stance. Wing Chun, Master Meow. Chapter 15, A Maiden's Lap Pillow. Outside the building, Mira Yumiko held Luke's phone. Her knee still hurt badly, preventing her from running too far. She thought about what the boy had just told her, her fingers expertly tapping on the phone screen. Vaguely, she heard sounds like Keiakan and Frieza. Her gaze swept over the few contacts on Luke's phone. She quickly dialed the number saved under the name Shady Merchant. She didn't have to wait long, the call connected quickly. Beep. The call connected, but the other side didn't speak. Miro Yumiko quickly said, "Emergency." There was a pause on the other end. Location. Miro Yumiko gave the other person the location. "I'll be there soon." A dialed tone followed, the other person had hung up. Miro Yumiko put the phone away, looked back at the terrifying commercial building, and wiped the dust from the scrapes on her knee. Although she had escaped the dangerous area, her heart was still pounding wildly, and her mind was a mess. She was already injured and couldn't do anything about those terrifying mannequins. She felt it was best not to go back and cause him more trouble. Leave professional matters to the professionals. She just needed to trust Luke's expertise. That was the smartest thing anyone could do. The incantations had completely dissipated. Fatigue, pain, all sorts of physical discomfort washed over him one after another. Luke lay powerlessly on the floor. Right now, due to the after-effects of the talisman hidden in his heart, he had completely lost the ability to move. He could only lie tiredly on the ground, staring at the scorched ceiling. This ceiling is really ceiling. Why? His mind wandered aimlessly. The truths of life and the universe flickered through his thoughts. But he finally had to face an incredibly sad and cruel reality. He, with 16 points of strength, 12 points of agility, 9 points of constitution, plus the incantation buffs, couldn't beat a single calico cat. Could there be anything more frustrating than this? This depressing fact made him numb to any physical discomfort. Pain, so much pain. The calico cat started moving, ending his rambling thoughts meant to suppress the pain. He slowly turned his head to watch the calico cat, seeing its next actions. The calico cat, with its black, white, and brown patches, its yellow eyes gleaming, had apparently decided against finding a cozier spot to eat after the earlier incident. Its movements were agile, its steps light. The pads on its paws landed silently on the floor as it walked with an elegant feline gait towards the doll. The old, tattered doll also lay quietly on the floor, its eyes hollow and deep. But somehow, signs of life suddenly appeared on the lifeless fabric. Perhaps it saw its impending doom, as it continuously emitted soul language. And so, Luke kept hearing its calls, but he couldn't understand. Seeing him make no move, the doll's urgent calls quickened. This time, he vaguely guessed the meaning because the long string of sounds the doll emitted included words like help, allowing him to recognize a few words. Could it be some foreign language? Sorry, when it comes to foreign language, I'm a total clueless. Luke thought helplessly. He watched helplessly as the calico cat opened its small mouth and swallowed the doll possessed by the evil spirit in one gulp. The doll seemed to struggle the moment it was swallowed, but soon, that evil aura was neutralized by the calico cat's power. Instantly, the oppressive feeling that had weighed down the surroundings vanished. The world seemed to have put on peaceful clothes again. He vaguely understood some of the inside story. Mira Yumiko had been able to live a seemingly normal life for so long despite the doll's influence. There wasn't some deep reason for it. It was simply because they couldn't communicate due to the language barrier. This communication obstacle had unexpectedly helped Miro Yumiko avoid all potential crises. As for the doll being able to call out Miro Yumiko's name, it seemed like it was just mimicking human speech it had overheard, like a baby babbling. Additionally, because the evil spirit possessed this doll, all its malice was hidden, which was why he hadn't noticed anything unusual when he visited the Miro house before. The reason for its sudden outburst today was likely because the doll received a power boost from his event card, or perhaps this environment, which allowed many mannequins to become spiritual vessels, had strengthened its abilities. Anyway, the foreign-speaking doll met its demise today. Notification: event card mission progress has ended. Your challenge is complete. You have received a reward item, magical cat pendant. Cat pendant? He looked carefully at the calico cat that had swallowed the doll. Mimi, having devoured the evil spirit doll, staggered a couple of steps, then curled up on the floor as if drunk. Closing its big yellow eyes, it rested its small head gently on its soft paws and fell into a comfortable sleep, cute snores escaping its nose and mouth. Luke breathed a sigh of relief. At least it wasn't an enemy in the challenge mission. He should be safe now. His thoughts settled. In that moment of distraction, the cat before him vanished, replaced by a pendant lying face down on the floor. My reward. Luke instantly realized. He wanted to go pick it up, but he forgot. His body couldn't move at all. Hiss. The pain shooting through his body made him suck in a sharp breath. He had to temporarily abandon the thought of moving. In the silent building, he heard the clack-clack of human footsteps on the floor above. Luke suddenly panicked. Could it be that shady merchant had arrived? If that person found the pendant, she'd definitely try to extort him. Are you okay? A soft voice spoke, and a shadow blocked his view. Ah, it's Mira. Luke replied, seeing the blonde hair falling beside his face. Didn't I tell you to leave? Weren't you afraid it was still dangerous here? Hey. My leg doesn't hurt anymore. I don't want to be a complete burden. Miro Yumiko's face flushed red, her voice rising slightly. See, I'm useful now. Do you need me to help you up? Don't. Luke quickly yelled. My whole body hurts like hell right now, don't you move me. Oh, okay. Miro Yumiko's voice softened again. Right, is your knee okay? Luke looked at Miro Yumiko's knee as she crouched beside him, simultaneously noticing something he shouldn't have seen. It's fine. Miro Yumiko murmured, barely audible. Silence fell for a moment. Hey. Miro Yumiko looked at the dazed Luke, thought for a second, then suddenly realized something, angrily pulling down her short skirt, covering the beautiful scenery. Pink. Feeling rude, Luke quickly averted his gaze. Ahem, could you grab that pendant over there for me? That's mine. Miro Yumiko shot him a fierce glare, walked over, picked up the cat pendant, and tossed it into his hand. Magical cat pendant, passive 1, cat's agility. When wearing this pendant, ignore attribute limits and gain an additional +3 agility. Passive 2, cat's grace. When wearing this pendant, ignore attribute limits and gain an additional +3 spirit. Active, summon Mimi. You can actively summon this magical cat. It possesses powerful spiritual senses and can deal with evil ghosts. It has profound martial arts skills and can punish wicked people. But be warned, after summoning it, you must pay a hefty price, otherwise, it will leave you price, 1 cat treat stick or a can of cat food, or something else that satisfies it. My god, such an expensive price. Sarcasm. Miro Yumiko crossed her arms, looking away. But seeing Luke shaking his head on the floor, she still asked, "What's wrong with that head of yours, full of rubbish thoughts?" Luke put away his joy from obtaining a high-quality item and replied to her, "Oh, side effect of the exorcism. My head hurts all over, and this floor is too hard. Just have to move my head to a different spot on the ground to lessen the pain." "Serves you right." Miro Yumiko huffed. "Ouch. How disheartening." Luke pouted and continued to move his head. "Do you need your backpack to cushion it?" Miro Yumiko asked. "Forget it, the backpack isn't exactly soft either," Luke said painfully. Miro Yumiko bit her dry lips. He looked puzzled at Miro Yumiko, who had crouched beside him again. Miro Yumiko gently lifted his head, placed the backpack under her knees, then knelt on it. Placing her hands behind his head, she lifted it with extreme care. And so, Luke felt his head resting on something soft, fragrant, and gentle. The pain lessened significantly. "So comfortable," he muttered to himself. "Shut your stupid mouth, or I'll throw your head out," Miro Yumiko continued fiercely. But her eyes darted side to side, and combined with her shy expression, her fierce words didn't match at all. Strangely, he felt a little shy too. He obediently closed his mouth, enjoying the rare moment of peace. Chapter 16, Location, Have Goods, Come Quick. On the 4th floor of the commercial building, the surroundings were exceptionally quiet, giving a rare sense of peace. Luke lay on Miro Yumiko's lap. The soft, warm touch, along with the faint girlish fragrance, was it his imagination? Gradually eased the fatigue from the intense battle, bringing a comfortable relaxation. Even though waves of pain still pulsed through his body, the long-accumulated exhaustion washed over him too, making his thoughts drift into emptiness. Miro Yumiko looked down at Luke resting on her legs, her expression inexplicably complex. Her legs must be really comfortable as a pillow, Miro Yumiko thought randomly. She was quite confident about the figure she had developed through tennis training. After all, she had put in a lot of effort for beauty, elegance, confidence, and all those other virtues. Ugh! Miro Yumiko suddenly pushed her own head with her hand. Her mind snapped back. What kind of nonsensical things was she just thinking? And why was she letting a guy who wasn't even a friend or acquaintance, practically an enemy, rest on her lap? Although, he did save her. Just this once. If he dares tell anyone about this, I'll definitely make him pay. Miro Yumiko nodded firmly, having made up her mind. She looked down at the boy, who was still frowning even in sleep, and mischievously reached out a finger. "This is for bullying me during tennis. This is for scaring me in front of the mannequins just now." Miro Yumiko playfully poked and pinched his face. His face, like putty, inexplicably lifted her spirits. "Yo. Bad timing on my part, huh?" A voice suddenly sounded from behind them. "Yeah." Miro Yumiko shrieked, scrambling to her feet on numb legs. But, the boy went flying off. "Ouch!" Luke rolled over, crying out in pain. A woman dressed in a witch-like skirt looked on with interest. "Oh my, was I perhaps intruding?" Hearing that voice, Luke immediately cursed, "You damn shady merchant, showing up so late. Were you planning to collect my corpse?" "Oh. Looks like I came too early, interrupting your sweet moment with your little girlfriend." The shady merchant woman held up a heavily decorated mirror, glancing left and right. She didn't see anything unusual, looked like the situation here had been resolved quite perfectly. "Yes, you came too early. I wasn't done lying there yet." Luke wanted to kill the shady merchant with a death glare. No. We're not like that." Miro Yumiko quickly refuted. "Oh, hello. My name is Kasumizuki." The shady merchant, named Kasumizuki, nonchalantly took off her gloves and extended a hand towards Miro Yumiko. "She's not in the business," Luke reminded her. "Oh, okay." Kasumizuki clicked her tongue and retracted her hand. Although confused, Miro Yumiko swallowed her questions and shifted her gaze to Luke, who had rolled onto the floor, unsure what to do. "Is there anything I can help you with?" "No need to rush, I'll help your little boyfriend first." Kasumizuki started taking things out of the suitcase she brought. "You use that talisman, right?" "Yes," Luke replied. "Hey. I told you, we're not like that." Miro Yumiko reminded her again. "Alright then." Kasumizuki took out a bottle of water, added something to it, shook it gently twice, and casually tossed it to the blonde girl. "Feed this to him first." Miro Yumiko looked warily at the cloudy water. "What did you put in there?" Kasumizuki didn't answer, but Luke called out to the wary girl, "Don't worry about it, just let me drink it." He really didn't want to know what was added. When dealing with things in this line of work, anything that defied common sense or broke psychological boundaries could exist. He just wanted to drink it down like a simple, not-so-tasty beverage. "Okay." Yumiko slowly lifted his head and placed the bottle's mouth to his lips. Gulp, gulp. Luke squeezed his eyes shut, held his breath, and downed the entire bottle in one go. Seeing his pained expression, Yumiko quickly asked, "How is it?" "Ugh. Tastes awful." Luke grimaced, wiping his mouth. If he had to describe this damn stuff, it was like blech. Luke dry heaved again. "Forget it, better not dwell on the taste. You can move your body now?" Yumiko quickly noticed his condition. A 500,000 yen item should at least have this much effect. Kasumizuki chuckled, putting away the tools she used to inspect the surroundings and strolling over to him. "Feeling better? Can you tell me what happened?" Her eyes glanced towards Yumiko. Luke rubbed his aching body. "Yeah, she was involved too, so I'll just tell you directly. I still have to go to school later." "Quite dedicated." Kasumizuki chuckled again. And so, Luke recounted the series of not-so-complicated events to her, not even hiding the part about the Kung Fu cat. Kasumizuki listened to the entire process with a serious expression, pondering for a moment. "So, basically, we need to investigate the origin of these mannequins, and that strange cat and doll." "Yes." Luke nodded. "And also check out the fire that happened here before, see if there's any connection." Kasumizuki nodded, then looked at the pendant in his hand. "Can I see it?" "That pendant?" Luke casually tossed it to her, warning sternly, "That's mine, don't even think about taking it." Kasumizuki glanced at him, took off her glove again, and ran her palm over the pendant. After a moment, she tossed it back. "Doesn't look like there's any problem. Since you want it, you can have it." He slowly hung the pendant around his neck. Having dealt with her a few times, Luke knew her quirks and wouldn't fall into her traps. "What do you mean I want it? It was mine to begin with. Stop trying to get favors for the price of the spiritual vessels later. Just bill me the market price, I won't give you a single yen discount." "TCH." Kasumizuki pouted. "No trust at all. How disheartening. Cut the crap. Remember to transfer the money to me. The rest is up to you. I need to get back to school." Luke wasn't buying her act. He picked up his backpack and said to Yumiko, "Stop staring, let's go." "Aren't you going to school?" Yumiko quickly responded, Oh. They walked out of the commercial building. Kasumizuki made a call. 2 trucks. Location, have goods, come quick. Watching her, Luke didn't linger either, already thinking about how to explain this to his teacher. On the way to school, Luke and Yumiko walked one behind the other, both looking down, lost in their own thoughts. Chapter 17, Hiratsuka Shizuka still comes out on top. Almost at school. Yumiko, who had been following behind Luke, suddenly quickened her pace and closed the distance. "Hey. She began softly. "What's wrong?" Luke glanced at her. Yumiko looked away, avoiding his gaze, yet her tone was very sincere. "Thank you very much for your help this time. And also, I doubted your professionalism before, and this time I even got you so seriously injured. I'm really sorry." Luke turned his body to face Yumiko directly. "Don't worry too much about it. It's my duty." The wind rustling the leaves felt cool. Luke's thoughts cleared a bit, and he continued, "Besides, I took money from your mother, and you are my classmate. Logically and emotionally, I should protect you." "Oh." Yumiko's thoughts had been chaotic all day, she didn't know what to say. "If you really want to thank me, could you please do me a favor?" "What is it?" Yumiko turned her head back. Her gaze was so intense that it made him look away. Just come up with an excuse for being late. Don't tell the teacher or other classmates about this incident." "Why?" Yumiko asked the question that had been lurking in her mind for a long time. "If ghosts really exist, why don't you announce it, let everyone know? If everyone knew about ghosts, everyone could take protective measures." Luke shook his head. "You're wrong, Mira. Hiding this from everyone is actually the best protection for them." Yumiko's eyes widened, looking somewhat incredulous. "Huh? Why is that?" Luke pointed at himself, then at the clothes Yumiko was wearing. "Don't you know what your classmates are like? In some ways, they're as brave as protagonists in hot-blooded anime. If they knew ghosts existed in the world, even if they were scared stiff, they'd still dig 3 feet deep searching for ghosts." He took a deep breath. If they provoked some powerful evil spirit, like this time, things would go wrong. Yumiko thought about it and felt it was indeed true. If she hadn't experienced what happened today, she probably would have acted just as he described. "Okay, I get it. Good. Please make sure to keep quiet about it, Mira." They were almost at school. So, Luke put on his glasses. "Looks and presence sealing jutsu." Staring at him, Yumiko suddenly felt her mood sour. "Depends on my mood." Hearing her words, Luke's eyes widened behind his lenses. He stared in shock as Miro Yumiko walked past him haughtily. How could a woman change her mind so drastically? Luke was about to speak, but the blonde girl, walking up to him, regained her usual confident school aura. She turned, pointed at Luke, and said, "After experiencing something like this, let's just call it even for what happened before. So, I'll allow you to call me. Call me Yumiko." Luke was somewhat speechless, but under the threat of Miro Yumiko's increasingly dangerous glare, he reluctantly opened his mouth. "Yumiko-san?" Instantly, Miro Yumiko, having gotten her wish, felt incredibly awkward. "Maybe you should just call me Mira after all." Luke stared at her. "You're really willful." Fine, call me whatever you want." Miro Yumiko mumbled softly, walking towards the school grounds with light steps. "Remember your promise." "Depends on my mood." Miro Yumiko waved her hand. Such a self-centered person. "Explain yourselves. Why were you both so late?" During break time, Hiratsuka Shizuka looked at the boy and girl before her, one hand instinctively rubbing her aching head. Luke, that rascal, was one thing, but how did Miro Yumiko get involved too? Encountered a little challenge on the road of life. Luke lowered his voice, slouching slightly to emphasize his weak state. "Speak human." Hiratsuka Shizuka's headache worsened. "On the way to school, I saw a cat about to be hit by a car. I saw there wasn't enough time, so I rushed forward and saved the cat." Luke recited the excuse he had prepared earlier. Whether Hiratsuka Shizuka believed this story or not, she asked, "Are you okay? Not too serious?" Sigh. Hiratsuka Shizuka sighed and turned to Miro Yumiko, who was also late. "What about you, Mira-san?" "When he saved the cat, I was right there. I fell while dodging the car." Miro Yumiko corroborated. Hiratsuka Shizuka tapped her fingers on the desk and said, "All right, sensei believes you. You should go to the school nurse first to treat your wound." Luke quickly asked, "What about me? I'm seriously injured too." Hiratsuka Shizuka glanced at him. "You wait here." Miro Yumiko gave him a "can't help you" look and had to leave first. Luke stood tiredly, looking at his teacher's clothes, still the trademark white lab coat. "Huh? Where did it go?" Hiratsuka Shizuka muttered strangely, rummaging through things on her desk, searching for her cigarettes. Luke silently pinched the cigarette pack in his pocket. Sigh. Hiratsuka Shizuka let out a heavy sigh, leaning back powerlessly in her chair. Then, she looked suspiciously at the boy. Luke remained expressionless. "Find a chair and sit down," Hiratsuka Shizuka finally said helplessly. Although she didn't search him, she was certain the cigarettes were with him. "Oh." Seeing Luke sit down, she continued asking, "Did you really get hit by a car?" "Well, if I said I encountered mischievous ghosts on the way, and it was my duty to eliminate them, would you believe me?" Luke rolled his eyes. "Getting hit by a car is indeed more believable." Hiratsuka Shizuka sighed her lament. "Then why did you ask?" Hiratsuka Shizuka ignored his eye roll and just continued lamenting to herself. "Last time it was getting hit saving a dog. This time getting hit saving a cat. How come you haven't been transported to another world yet?" "I'm brave, not reckless. I wouldn't risk my life just to do a good deed. Anyway, your commute to school is truly arduous. In that case, I hope my commute home can be smoother." Hiratsuka Shizuka decisively refused. "No can do. I can allow you to rest in the nurse's office, but you're not allowed to skip the afternoon club activity." Luke said with a headache. Fine, I get it. Even though I still don't think I need reforming, since I promised, I'll go." "I know." Hiratsuka Shizuka said softly. Luke looked at her suspiciously. Hiratsuka Shizuka stood up, placed one hand on his shoulder, and looked down at him. "I said, I know you have the ability to return to a normal life. Then why are you still making me join a club?" "Let me finish." Hiratsuka Shizuka increased the pressure on his shoulder, leaning closer. Once he quieted down, she leaned close to his face. He could even feel her breath. Hiratsuka Shizuka continued, "You and Yuki Noshita are two different types. Yuki Noshita, I can feel it, she has a soft heart, she's a very gentle person. But she's built walls around herself. Although they protect her, they've also robbed her of the ability to live a normal life. Ultimately, I'm just a teacher. There's a limit to how I can help her. So since you've joined the service club, I hope you can help her. Just consider it a request from your teacher. Should have just said so earlier. Leave this matter to me." Luke didn't refuse this kind of request. He thumped his chest near his heart as if making a vow, then quickly rubbed it again. Hiss. "Ow, that hurts. Forgot I'm still injured." Hiratsuka Shizuka, wearing a strange smile, pulled away from his face. Relaxed, she leaned back against her desk, casually tapped a cigarette from her pack, lit it with a lighter held lightly in her hand. She exhaled a relaxed, leisurely puff of smoke, partly from the relief of the boy accepting her request, and partly from the secret joy of her scheme succeeding. Gotcha. Luke suddenly slapped his pocket. Damn it. Honey trap. I fell for it. But it really was a brilliant tactic. Falling for it was unavoidable. Luke sighed. Remember your promise. Hiratsuka Shizuka was in a very good mood. I know. Luke left resentfully. Watching Luke's retreating back, Hiratsuka Shizuka leaned back in her chair. Maybe I should talk to Yuki Noshita too. Chapter 18, Yuki Noshita, do you have friends? After talking with Hiratsuka-sensei, he didn't go to the nurse's office to rest but went straight back to his classroom. Putting on the glasses that sealed his presence and good looks, the chattering students during break time didn't pay attention to his arrival. He glanced towards Miro Yumiko's seat. She was surrounded by her good friends, who were eagerly asking about her injuries. The blonde girl seemed thoughtful as she looked towards the doorway. What's wrong? Yumiko? Yuagahama Yua, with her light pink hair tied in buns, asked curiously, seeing her friend suddenly go quiet mid-conversation. Nothing. Miro Yumiko quickly snapped back, waving her hands so fast they blurred, hastily saying. But it drew strange looks from her companions. Maybe because I didn't sleep well yesterday, and then had that accident this morning, so I'm having trouble concentrating. Miro Yumiko quickly explained. So even Mira can be like this. A boy next to her, probably. Forget it, anyway, some boy, chattered. Hey. What are you talking about? Miro Yumiko reverted to her usual, slightly aggressive state. Luke withdrew his gaze and returned to his seat. Miro Yumiko should keep her promise. He glanced at the classmate in front of him, who was also doing nothing, and took out his phone. He had forgotten something earlier replying to Mira-san, mother, about her daughter. Perfect, now he had time to tell her about the outcome. He wondered if Miro Yumiko had already told her mother that she was safe. And Mira-san, mother, as if always online, replied to his message very quickly. He could tell Mira-san, mother, was an elder who kept up with recent trends. At least the bunch of emojis she sent him were quite fitting. Compared to the cold text he sent back. Mira-san, mother, seemed more like a young person. And after receiving her thanks, his mission was also completed. Notification, occupation mission, exorcist, kick the ghosts' butts. Help others with supernatural problems, 10 out of 10, completed. You have received a reward, Ecchi. Ecchi? Luke's mouth flattened. His eyebrows pressed down, narrowing his eyes. Then he carefully savored the word. Who took a cut of the reward the system gave me? Holding on to the last shred of hope, Luke rummaged through his backpack. An item had indeed appeared out of thin air. Empty, the mirror of seeing, named Empty. It reflects the emptiness of humans, reflects the image of non-existence. Where light shines, demons and monsters are all revealed for a time. Alright, a demon revealing mirror. Identification complete. Luke took out the demon revealing mirror. It looked like an antique, about the size of his palm, carved with colorful lotus flowers around the edges. The mirror surface was smooth as ice, shining like autumn water. But when his face was reflected in it, the mirror showed the color of the ceiling. He took off his glasses and looked again. The mirror surface remained empty. Gently turning it over, Luke put the mirror away and continued looking at the system. It had issued him a new occupation mission, exorcist, kick the ghosts' butts. Help others with supernatural problems, 0 out of 20. Great, an endless cycle of repeating missions. Luke speechlessly closed the system panel. He had thought there might be a new type of mission, but it was just the same old thing repackaged. From his very first exorcist mission to the current one requiring solving 20 supernatural problems, it was basically a constant cycle of 10 or 20 progress points. But it was fine. Better than some stupid mission asking him to exorcise some so-called ghost god. The class bell rang. Luke's straight back suddenly relaxed, and his cheek leaned directly against the nearby wall. The student rate awake and sleepy during class, energetic after class. Life's time is always short. During school days, accompanied by interesting classmates, time feels like it passes even faster. It was soon time for club activities. Even though he had rested for a long time after getting to his seat and had eaten a satisfying lunch, Luke still felt increasingly tired. Sigh. He pushed himself up, gently exhaling through his nose. He didn't know how long this state would last. The last time he used the talisman near his heart, his constitution was much better than now, yet he still felt tired and pained for about 3 days. This time it might last even longer, but who knows what might happen. After slowly walking to the special building, Luke sensed the surrounding environment. When he came yesterday, he hadn't paid much attention. Even though other clubs were active, Besides the rustling sounds of the environment, no human voices could be heard around the service club where Yukino Shita Yukino was. A cold and icy state. Quite fitting atmosphere for Yukino Shita's club. Luke gently opened the service club's door. Just like yesterday, Yukino Shita Yukino was still reading quietly, her posture exactly the same as yesterday. Her gaze shifted over, like a wild beast guarding its territory, scrutinizing him for a moment with icy eyes. Then, the next instant, her gaze returned to her book. Cold as a blade, completely different from Mira's fiery feeling. Luke vaguely recalled the sensation of Mira Yumiko's lap pillow. He then quickly shook his head. Why am I suddenly thinking about the troublesome Mira? Has that head of yours, capable only of instinctual actions, become impatient to leave your body already? Mr. Paramecium. Yukino Shita Yukino said bluntly. Luke stopped moving, rubbing his aching neck. He could already ignore her mockery. He sat straight down and replied, Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I thought you wouldn't come back. A slight curve appeared on Yukino Shita Yukino's lips. Don't worry. Since I promised Hiratsuka-sensei, I should at least put in some effort, logically and emotionally. That's right. Luke pushed Hiratsuka Shizuka's homework promise to the back of his mind. He was an upright person, he wouldn't be tempted just to write less homework. Is that so? I thought you were a masochist, wanting to come back here despite the harsh words. Yukino Shita Yukino showed no interest in his explanation and continued on her own. If you know your words are so harsh, yet you still speak maliciously, that's truly awful. Luke looked helplessly at Yukino Shita Yukino. Besides, it's worth mentioning, I naturally don't have masochistic tendencies. Could it be that you have sadistic tendencies? He. Yukino Shita Yukino let out a cold laugh, but there was no joy in her eyes. I don't have such lowbrow hobbies as finding amusement in tormenting single-celled organisms. Moreover, my words are correct conclusions inferred from experience and knowledge. Please don't try to evade them. Speaking of which, Yukino Shita Yukino proudly puffed out her chest, full of confidence in herself. Luke rubbed his brow, then looked up at the ice-cold Yukino Shita Yukino. Yukino Shita-san, pardon my asking, but, do you have any friends? Chapter 19, Yukino Shita's Black Tea. Faced with his question, Yukino Shita Yukino, usually as calm as ice, was suddenly at a loss for words. We should probably first define what scope of activity and communication counts as being friends. Luke nodded, understanding everything. So it seems you don't have any friends then. He formed an initial impression of Yukino Shita Yukino. Groups that ate, drank, and played together, gathered during breaks, and eagerly planned hangouts after school or during holidays, those counted as friends. People who didn't contact each other often but worked towards a common goal, only occasionally meeting to discuss experiences, also counted as friends. But clearly, Yukino Shita Yukino, whose social circle was confined to school, was the type who walked alone. Hiratsuka Shizuka's description of Yukino Shita Yukino wasn't wrong. Of course, excluding the adjective gendal. Which didn't fit at all. Did I say I don't have friends? Besides, even if I really don't, it wouldn't be any loss to me, okay? Yukino Shita Yukino retorted coldly. Luke raised the corner of his mouth, casually deflecting the hostile glare the icy girl shot his way. Ah, yes, that's right, it's just like that. Although the words coming from his mouth were ordinary, combined with his inexplicable tone, even the calm Yukino Shita Yukino couldn't help but feel a little breathless. Luke took out his phone, Yukino Shita Yukino picked up her book. Their conversation ended there. The entire classroom returned to Yukino Shita Yukino's previous aura that pushed people thousands of miles away. He took out his phone and started talking with Kasumizuki. Luke, how's it going? Any related information? Kasumizuki replied quickly. Kasumizuki, only found out that this place used to be a shopping mall a long time ago, and the fourth floor was indeed where clothes were sold. Besides a major fire happening later, there's no other information. Luke, how many people died? Kasumizuki, maybe dozens? Not exactly clear. Luke leaned back in his chair, contemplating. For the formation of spiritual vessels, these were indeed uniquely favorable conditions. But for so many mannequins to become spiritual vessels just because of a fire disaster seemed somewhat unbelievable. Love, hate, resentment, departure. Spiritual vessels themselves were curses formed from human thoughts and emotions. What immense negative emotions must have accumulated to create the environment needed for these mannequins to become spiritual vessels? The reason could only be caused by his event card. Or, some anti-human element was causing destruction. So, he continued questioning Kasumizuki. Luke, since such a serious fire occurred, didn't any exorcists go there before? Kasumizuki, of course. Luke, How is that exorcist doing now? Ask him about the building situation. Kazumizaki, that was me. Luke, Kazumizaki, I said, the person who went to that fire scene was me. Luke. Kazumizaki, I went to check back then. I helped all the people who died unjustly pass on. It's definitely not my problem. Luke, let's just say that. Kazumizaki, what do you mean let's just say? Luke, remember to split the money from the mannequins with me, bye. Luke slammed his phone, already set to silent, face down on the table and pinched the bridge of his nose. No wonder this shady merchant arrived so quickly this morning. Probably because a place she had previously inspected had issues, and she came over to check for omissions. But it probably wasn't her fault either. 9 times out of 10, it was caused by the challenge from the event card he received after completing his mission. However, if someone came looking for him, he could just blame it on Kazumizaki. Thinking this, Luke picked up his phone again and took a screenshot of his chat with Kazumizaki. Perfect? A gurgling sound interrupted his thoughts. He looked towards the source of the sound. An electric kettle? Besides himself. The only other possibility was Yukino Shita Yukino. Yukino Shita Yukino gently put down her book, picked up the electric kettle that had just boiled and switched off, preparing to make tea. Luke watched Yukino Shita Yukino's movements intently. This girl truly had reasons to be proud. Even simple actions like these looked so graceful and proper with the rhythm of her body. Incredible. Yukino Shita Yukino poured the freshly boiled, still steaming water from the kettle into a glass teapot. The tea leaves tumbled up and down with the rush of hot water, like little boats tossed in a storm, drifting within. Very fragrant. Even from a distance, Luke could smell the aroma of the tea leaves. Yukino Shita Yukino slowly filled her own teacup. Her movements paused. She thought for a moment, then took a paper cup from somewhere. Then, she glared coldly, fiercely, at the paper cup, yet filled it with tea all the same. No idea what the paper cup did to offend her. Speaking of which, he hadn't drunk tea in a long time either. Although cola wasn't exactly good for him, he seemed somewhat addicted to its taste. Compared to tea, a beverage requiring a certain state of mind to appreciate its nuances, the simple fatigue killer, iced cola, brought far greater pleasure to a body exhausted after a busy day. But still, he should drink less cola. Luke stared at the lone paper cup resting on the desk, steam wafting from it into the air, like his own wandering thoughts. The black tea will get cold if you don't drink it. Yukino Shita Yukino said coolly. Ah. It's for me? Luke didn't react for a moment. Yukino Shita Yukino was silent for a while before speaking calmly in her usual manner. Based on your childish and fantasy-filled worldview, perhaps it was left for the ghosts wandering the world. Luke blinked. Makes sense. Saying this, he still walked over to the table, picked up the scalding paper cup by the corner, and returned to his seat. He looked at the gently rippling surface of the tea and asked Yukino Shita Yukino, Yukino Shita-san. Yukino Shita Yukino turned her gaze towards him. Someone like you should be very popular. Why don't you have any friends? And so, Yukino Shita Yukino unhappily averted her gaze again. You wouldn't understand. Luke was speechless. Nonsense, how can I understand if you don't tell me? Is this girl really gentle? Hiratsuka-sensei. You might have misjudged. Luke thought helplessly. Isn't a popular life good? Yukino Shita Yukino thought for a moment, her red lips parting slightly. She took a sip of hot tea, moistening her lips and throat, then spoke softly. It seems your definition of popular is completely different from mine. Yukino Shita Yukino sighed. I've been very cute since I was little. All the boys around me liked me. Luke nodded. It probably started around upper elementary school, and it's been like that ever since. Isn't that a good thing? Luke looked at her, puzzled. Could it be you have a phobia of the opposites, X? Sigh. Yukino Shita Yukino sighed again, then looked at him seriously. If you had a friend who was very popular with girls, what would you think? Chapter 20, even the ice-cold Yukino Shita can't cool down black tea. If a friend was very popular with girls, what would I do? Hearing this question, Luke nodded thoughtfully. Then he needed to reminisce about his circle of friends, a group of exorcists disliked by both people and dogs. Except for Kazumizaki, the rest of them. Though he felt that saying it, besides ugly misfits. He couldn't think of a more fitting description for a moment. After all, based on looks that could make children cry, they probably wouldn't be very popular with girls. Then there was Mikaza Ackerman and Annie Lenhart. So, girls being close with other girls? That went against ethics and biology. However, thinking about Annie coldly pushing away clingy girls, then flicking her brilliant golden hair like sunshine, telling the girls she already had someone in her heart, and Mikaza catching a tennis ball that appeared out of nowhere, protecting a startled girl in her arms, her calm eyes matching her concerned words. "Are you okay?" Seemed pretty good too. "Like hell. I'd definitely throw those girls away," Luke said firmly, having made up his mind. Mikasa and Annie belonged to him alone, no one else was allowed to touch them, not even girls? Yukino was somewhat surprised by his reply and asked, puzzled, "Why?" Luke told her the reason he had just decided on. Sigh. "I thought you had some unique reason, but is it still just single-celled thinking?" Yukino helplessly poked her forehead. "I meant, what would you do if it were a male friend?" "I'd give them a free passage to the afterlife," Luke said, rubbing his palms together and pulling out a talisman. "A male friend? Even more unacceptable. Looks like your problems go beyond what Hiratsuka-sensei mentioned." Yukino lowered her head, pressing her temples as if nursing a headache. Luke turned his head with a smile, no longer just passing the time idly. "Alright, stop teasing you. Isn't the question just what I would do if a male friend was particularly popular with girls? Some people just love to play dumb, deliberately acting smart in front of me, but in reality, I've already seen right through them." Yukino lamented in some foreign language. Luke, not knowing what it meant, thought simply, "I don't understand." Although he wanted to ask what she meant, assuming it was mockery anyway, there was no need to seek humiliation by asking. Luke touched the scalding cup. "I never care about that kind of thing. Instead of feeling envious or jealous about such matters, it's better to focus on improving myself." Yukino looked at him in surprise. "Unexpectedly, I didn't think you'd say that. Then what did you think I'd say? Like a beast, take care of that person. This isn't Ecchi town, the police here aren't a bunch of wimps, Yukino." Luke took a small sip of black tea. "So what about you? What would you do?" Yukino smiled faintly. "Sorry, as I said before, I've always been the most popular one. To an outsider, this might seem like the best thing ever. But for the person caught in the vortex, it can only be described as a storm disrupting normal life." Luke asked, "Why?" Yukino's smile gradually faded, yet she continued narrating in a flat tone, as if speaking of things that didn't happen to her, because there are always some people who want to prove their existence in alternative ways. "In elementary school, my indoor shoes were hidden nearly 60 times. 50 of those times, they were hidden by girls in my class. So the remaining 10 times were done by boys?" Luke asked. "No, boys hid them 3 times, the teacher bought them twice, and 5 times they were hidden by a dog." "A dog? That dog is way too bad. By the way, was it the same dog?" Luke grasped the key point. "You're focusing on the wrong thing. No, I really want to know this dog's story." But asking Yukino about the dog again would surely lead to mockery, Luke thought firmly. Luke could only move on to the next topic. "Then, selling indoor shoes to the teacher? It was others who stole my shoes and sold them to those fools who thought putting their own child in my indoor shoes would make them as smart as me. Because of this, I have to bring my indoor shoes and recorder back and forth every day." Yukino said this with a look of annoyance. Even the well-traveled Luke felt a bit sweaty, saying helplessly, "You've certainly had it rough. Hee. But this is also unavoidable. After all, no one is perfect. Humans are weak, and their hearts are ugly. They approach others out of envy, and they get jealous enough of particularly outstanding people to band together and isolate them. Therefore, the more outstanding a person is, the harder their life is. Don't you think it's ironic? So, I want to change the world, change humanity." Seeing the sincerity in Yukino's eyes, her earnest attitude radiating outwards, Luke smiled. He suddenly felt this club was quite good, at least the president was quite interesting. "Are you mocking me for overestimating myself?" Yukino asked coolly, looking at his smile. "Of course not." Luke stood up, remembering Hiratsuka Shizuka's request to him. "I think you're amazing. So I'll help you." "Sorry, I don't need it." Yukino refused flatly. "This person really is a big block of ice. No wonder you have no friends," Luke muttered, picking up the paper cup and opening the door to look left and right. "Yukino-san, since no one else is coming, I'll leave a bit early today. I've been clearing my list recently, and I have a client whose house is a bit far." Behind him was still Yukino's cool voice. She was long used to being alone. "Please, feel free." Perhaps this was Yukino's attitude. She excelled in academics and character, perfect in many aspects, possessing a unique attraction to both the same and opposite sex. But she wouldn't dim her own light just because of the words and attitudes of those around her. She wouldn't compromise herself to fit into the group, so the group wouldn't have a place for her either. Luke tasted the black tea in the paper cup. It was still very hot. Looks like even the ice-cold Yuki no Shite couldn't cool down boiling black tea. A pretty good sentence. I'll write it in my Japanese literature homework next time. You use that talisman? Returning home after work, Luke was interrogated by Mikaza and Annie. Unable to hide it, Luke could only nod faintly. Yes. Didn't I tell you to this morning? Mikaza stood up. In that case, you need some food to replenish your nutrients. Ah. No need, this is already plenty rich. Luke quickly stopped Mikaza. This is already a lot. I really don't want to eat leftovers tomorrow. I can eat them. Mikaza remained stubborn. Luke cast a pleading look at Annie. The blonde girl gently shook her head. Luke didn't understand her meaning. We're out of meat at home. Annie said faintly. Mikaza carefully searched the refrigerator, then gave up. Well done. Luke gave Annie a satisfied nod of approval. Whenever Mikaza saw him get hurt, she would take some unexpected actions. He vaguely remembered the last time he was injured, Mikaza almost fed him to death. After all, based on Mikaza's unreasonable physical constitution and simple values when injured, eat more. Annie also deeply detested the leftovers they ate during that period. What exactly happened? She threw out the question, successfully diverting Mikaza's attention. Luke quickly summarized the morning's events, then cleverly didn't skip over the lap pillow Mira Yumiko had given him. Was it comfortable? Annie asked about the lap pillow. Very nice. Luke confirmed. The master's meaning was clear. He hoped his maids would be a bit more proactive. Chapter 21, With Me Around, Who Needs the Police? Luke lay on the bed, his tired head resting gently on Mikaza's lap. Although Mikaza's superhuman body possessed perfect strength and was full of toned muscles from exercise, it didn't feel like steel or stone. The sensation coming from behind his head was only soft, comfortable, and relaxing. Mikaza's slender fingers gently massaged his forehead. Her untrimmed long hair casually fell beside his face, its clean scent intoxicating. Her thumbs gently rotated and rubbed his temples, easing the fatigue accumulated from the talisman's outburst and a busy day. Luke lay contentedly, meeting Mikaza's eyes above him. He turned his head to look at Annie. She stood beside the clothes rack, gently removing the burdens from her body, her movements soft, her posture graceful. No wonder some people enjoyed watching others change clothes. This seemingly simple action could fully display a person's elegant figure. Annie's straight, slender legs slowly emerged from her lower garments. Her fair skin bathed in the warm yellow light. Straightening her body, Annie Lenhart leaned back slightly, her slender fingers gently smoothing her scattered golden hair along its texture. Her divinely crafted body revealed a dazzling expanse of fair, tender skin, appearing even more captivating and radiant under the light. Annie walked confidently to the foot of the bed, displaying her impressive figure. At the prime of youthful beauty tinged with innocence,